a long-awaited visit to the unpredictable high banks of Daytona. The field of hopefuls turned to the Lady Luck to try and have a dance with her to set the table for the first proper test of this 2026 season. Live from virtual Las Vegas and Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we welcome you to coverage of race number 2 in the Season 2 2026 Droppin the Hammah Cup Series and our first mile-and-a-half trip all season long. Glad that you're with us on the KBueno Racing Network. We're up atop the Las Vegas broadcast booth. I am Kenneth Bueno. We have a fantastic showing for you tonight as we continue to ring in this second season of the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series after an illustrious first campaign. Took us through several months and several different tests for the drivers overall in the campaign. Zachary Hall ending up with the victory at Homestead, Miami that locked up the championship for the first time for him. And then we had Daytona just last week on Sunday opening up the campaign. Plenty of veteran drivers that are coming back, plenty of those new names that have already stepped up to the plate. We'll talk about that and all the details heading into tonight's race from the newly repaved and newly revamped Las Vegas Motor Speedway here on iRacing. This 2026 schedule packed with a ton of different tracks. The first 2 race stretch mirroring what we saw back in 2025 early in the season at Daytona, opening up the campaign then, and then of course bringing the field down here to Las Vegas Motor Speedway to have the first proper chance for drivers to be tested on their tire saving discipline and plenty of more strategies over the course of the campaign. But the action just doesn't stop here. After Las Vegas, we move to a brand new repaved Iowa Speedway that comes up next Sunday. Echo Park Speedway, which was the semi-final last season, takes place in the 4th race of the schedule this time around, the 1.5 mile super speedway that was opened up Hampton, Georgia. And the former Atlanta Motor Speedway now turned into a high-intensity packed drafting track. North Wilkesboro coming back to the schedule was usually part of the All-Star race back in the Sunoco Cup Series days throughout its final seasons, but takes its shot here in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series regular season. And then we just continue on through late March and mid-April at the Auto Club Speedway, April 12th, before we have our All-Star race and this regular season continues to kick off. So as we've watched throughout the course of last season, how high intensity and high octane the entire campaign was, seeing Lawson Peel dominate the charts at 9 race victories in the season. Couldn't close it out with a championship. No Lawson Peel here tonight. He's the defending winner as we enter Las Vegas, Nevada here this evening. So let's give you a rundown as to what happened last week at the high banks of Daytona International Speedway, and what a start it was for the season. Clean and green on a very long race. Drivers just getting used to the new draft model of these NASCAR Next Gen Cup cars. Richard Swavely, James Kunkel having a chance leading early. There is Stephen Harlow getting a bump from Steven Stempion. Those 2 drivers will work very well to begin the race. They would then take the race lead. But it was all about strategy. Who was able to get down pit road at the proper time? Who was able to limit the mistakes? And most importantly, who could get out in front throughout the cycle? So this ended up being green. That was former Championship 4 driver Cedric Hunter. In the background, the 19 car Brad Fulham going around for a spill. He would create one of the first cautions of the night on the high banks there in turn 2 on a harmless incident. And then of course the racing up at the front. So exciting. The Harlows trying to help Steven Stempion get to the head of the field. We've seen that 88 car so special and so fantastic at these super speedways, but still without a Droppin the Hammah Cup Series race victory at that discipline. Close fighting at the front. Perusini, the rookie, leading a ton of laps, and then Warren Kyle Keith stepping out in front on a single file train as everyone prepped up for what would be the money stop to get all the way to the end, hopping down pit road. Plenty of drivers getting to the edge of the limit to find their way, and then when of course the blend came around, drivers like James Kunkel were able to surge up to the front and make it a proper fight. But then you go to the second half of this race and the final third, and it really just descended into pure super speedway chaos that we expect. Some of the onboards, Jesse Whittington in it, and then caution right here, turn 2, same place where Brad Fulham found trouble all by himself. This time a boatload of others that end up involved in the incident. Several heavy-hitting drivers being involved, leading up to a crucial restart inside the final 3 laps where South Carolina's Brandon Banks, winner from Kansas last season to get into the Championship 4, staves off the competition behind him and keeps the competition at bay for his first victory of the 2026 season and his second in a little while. So Brandon Banks comes away with the victory then at Daytona, looking to back that up with a promising mile-and-a-half performance tonight from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And like we've seen in this series and even across other series on the KBueno Racing Network, Brandon Banks is known for his pure discipline, tire-saving action, and of course the way he's been able to step out under long green flag circumstances, dominates the end of that super speedway race, and steps out in front of the point standings entering race 2. So like I said earlier, this is not the first time the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series field has visited Las Vegas Motor Speedway. We were here in the inaugural campaign back in Season 1, and when we were there, the first ever mile-and-a-half trip for the field at that point proved to be just as difficult as it will be tonight for the drivers, with an overtime restart and a dominant driver leading until the end. Warren Kyle Keith, Dakota Curtis, a pair of Toyotas will bring us out of turn 4. And for the second time this season, we're racing in the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series, this time from Las Vegas. Oh, there's a spinner on the back straightaway. Dylan Hervatin is around on the inside of the racetrack. Steven Stempion was right there with him. Stempion is able to clear for just a moment. Zachary Hall is still there for the lead. Peel and Muscarella in the first 2 rows on the inside to the Geico restart zone. Overtime from Las Vegas starts right now.
Great restart by Peel.
It's win number 1 in 2025 for Lawson Peel. Checkered flag at Las Vegas.
Well, that one was hard fought right there. I didn't think I was going to get that one a few times.
So with that, Lawson Peel comes into this as the defending winner, but as we've seen throughout the beginning portions of season number 2 and 2026, we are not expecting to see the Columbus, Mississippi native back in action to attempt for his first ever Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series title. But the 2-time Sunoco Cup Series champion, I believe 3-time Sunoco Cup Series champion, not being able to defend his crown, that leaves the door wide open for anybody in this field to step ahead, and really that's what's going to make it extremely exciting come the rest of this season, knowing that a lot of contenders are still in it. Plenty of those former Championship 4 drivers from the past season are in this field. Add in the new rookies, and you have yourself what could be a perfect storm in the fight for the title later on this year. So Las Vegas Motor Speedway, out in the desert of Las Vegas, Nevada, not too far from the strip proper. The 1.5 miler that opened back in 1996, one of the newer mile-and-a-halfs on the schedule for NASCAR, has been hosting races here for such a long time now with the degrees in the corners. Very important for the drivers tonight. We've seen this newly revamped Las Vegas Motor Speedway. They lessen the bumps overall on the racetrack, but it still provides for a hefty challenge, and like we've seen at other mile-and-a-halfs on the schedule, all going to be about tire saving and putting yourself in the right position for the track position side of it, especially now that we don't have any stages here in this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series, so it is providing a healthy challenge for those at the front, in the back, in the middle. No matter where you stack them, they're going to find themselves with a challenge to put themselves at the front of the field. Here's an onboard lap to give you a scope as to how you drive this Las Vegas Motor Speedway in its newest form. Beautiful as always, hard work from the iRacing group to get the design on this proper to make it look like it does in real life. You see those huge bumps in turn 1. You got to stay right in the middle lane. You can run the bottom proper near the white line, but you really want to tread the waters lightly. Those bumps can oscillate this next-gen car out of shape. And then in 3 and 4, faster part of the racetrack, you can nearly lift maybe 85% on the throttle and still go back in action at the exit of turn 4. That will be a huge tire-saving ploy for a ton of the drivers in this field tonight, just making sure they don't get too eager behind the gas pedal and then ultimately end up washing up into the outside wall. So that will play a large role in what we will see here in this race. And of course, given the fact that things have ended up the way they did last season in an overtime restart, plenty of chaos and plenty of things that added in to that final restart of the race is going to make it more important now that we have a situation where no stages, no situations like that. You got to fight for every given dollar here at Las Vegas and potentially win the jackpot. So let's join a driver who was part of that Las Vegas race last season, was coming up short of the race victory, but still gave himself a proper chance. We're joined by one of the league owners of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series in Steven Stempion. Steven, it's great to talk to you after a little while. I missed Daytona, but I'm back in action for Las Vegas. You come into this track probably with the highest momentum out of anyone in the field from last season. What can you take into tonight's race to try and go at it for a win?
Well, first things first, it's good to have you back, Kenneth. We missed you last week.
Just try to, adjust my strategy a little bit with the no stages. I think it's going to play into my favor a little bit. I do like the longer green flag runs where I can kind of conserve a little bit. I don't know how much it's going to conserve, though. I mean, I ran about a full tank tonight, and I was down to like 3% on the right front. So we got some work to do there for a long green flag run. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully get myself a win and start off strong this season. Shake off that bad luck from last year.
We saw a lot of changes fundamentally with this next-gen car, and it just continues to evolve more. And I remember talking to you about it. You said you weren't too fond of it at the moment. You've had some time to get used to it along with the rest of the drivers. How important is track position going to be tonight with the tire wear and with the way these cars handle in the sim?
It's very important. I mean, you got... somebody can dump air on your nose and you're just, you're going right into the wall coming off the corner. So you got to time it right. You got to find clean air, especially coming off the corner, which is going to affect some guy's strategy, right? You think it's going to, you got a good run on them, but if you time it at the wrong spot, you're going to just end up screwing yourself. So just got to work on that all night. It's going to be a, never-ending learning process tonight. Luckily, we got 200 laps to figure it out, and we'll see what happens.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun, Steven, seeing you and the rest of the field out there. Hopefully, it should be a very fun race here from Las Vegas. We always appreciate the time, Steven, and best of luck on the grid.
Anytime, buddy. Appreciate it. Hopefully, I'll talk to you after.
That's Steven Stempion, the Massachusetts native, coming into this race, finishing just shy of the race victory. Last time we were here back in Season 1, he'll try to parlay his momentum from there into a possible race victory here tonight. So drivers are lined up behind the iRacing official pace car. Let's bring you tonight's starting grid as the field is lined up for the second race in this 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season from the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway, where for the second time in his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career, Alex Muscarella leads him to the front with a 29.350 and just a 21/100ths of a second difference to Jaden Porter right behind. Led some laps at Daytona last week and one of the newer entrants into Season 2 of this Cup Series. He'll try to tally his second win in his career from the outside of row number 1. Steven Stempion, the driver we just talked to not that long ago, is going to ride from third behind his Droppin' the Hammah Racing teammate. Matt Bayens in the number 72, one of the rookie drivers in this series. That purple machine lines up on the outside in fourth. Inside and outside of row 3 is where settles Garrett Walden in the number 43. Jesse Whittington, a triumphant return from the last several seasons of the Sunoco Cup Series. Glad to see him in action in DTH in 2026. 7th place goes to the 20 machine of Justin Erb. Ray Rogers, returning name from the old Sunoco days. Here in 2026 for DTH, he lines his car up in 8th place on the starting grid. Row 5 will feature Chuck Stevens in his number 84 machine, and Brad Fulham, one of the members of this series from last season. Fulham ends up with a 29.485 to line up on the outside of the top 10. Daniel Holdcroft, his number 4 is going to be 11th. Richard Swabley back in 12th position, while back in 13th is where settles Stephen Harlow in that position. Jason Anderson flanking him on the outside in 14th place. Row number 8, you'll find the rookie Matthew Perusini in the 96 car from 15th, and James Kunkel in his number 12 machine from the outside in 16th place. Ross Harlow, a pretty deep start back in 17th, and fellow deep start for a driver that loves to rip the boards at these mile and a halfs. Warren Kyle Keith, his number 24 machine, lines up on the outside in 18th place. Brandon Banks, winner from last week and a winner from Kansas last season, looking to parlay some more mile and a half success, although he'll rally from 19th. And David Duran, the number 98 machine, on the inside of the top 20. Lauren Vincent led some laps in his debut at Daytona. He's 21st. Sheldon Hart back in 22nd, while 23rd is the defending winner at Daytona from last season, Timothy Stubblefield, back in action in the 9 car. Charles Van Schaik in the 23 is on the outside in 24th. Kip Easley for Drinkin' Bros Racing has a deep start from 25th, and so does Parker Bland in the number 26 machine. She lines it up outside row 13. Meanwhile, Christian McCrelly and Cedric Hunter, 2 drivers that are first on the board, not to set a qualifying time, an uncharacteristic start for Cedric Hunter at the back of the field, who was in contention to win at Las Vegas last season, and Kevin Roy lining out our 29 car field. So as we visit the Sin City here in 2026, a look at our skmcars.com race analysis. 200 laps, just a little around 300 miles, and 480 kilometers. And like we mentioned in the pre-race show, no stages in Season 2's edition of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series, so all about strategy. And what's going to be really fascinating is now that there are no manufactured yellows, how do the drivers approach this? Alex Muscarella, already a previous pole in his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career, but no victories up until that point in 2025. He's got Jaden Porter on the outside in row number 1 as we get ready for the second edition of DTH Cup Racing here in 2026. Muscarella, Jaden Porter, inside, outside, lead us to the green flag, and we are racing from Las Vegas. Porter trying to fight hard from the outside lane, but the top shelf move is not executed at the exit of turn 4. And at the exit of lap 1, Alex Muscarella in full command, using the middle to play some defense on Porter, while Steven Stempion and Garrett Walden go at it for third. A promising start for Muscarella, and on the outside, Matt Bayens trying to work on the fellow rookie in Walden, that Walmart number 43 Chevrolet. And it's all Chevrolets in the front 5 as we head back to turn 1. Walden continuing to push on the inside. They'll try and add in Steven Stempion to the bowl, but Stempion so far refuses any offer to join the party, and a couple of them smack the outside wall off the exit of turn 2. That is something we'll watch over the course of this race. And while these next-gen cars do have exacerbated dirty air, so if you ride in the back of traffic, this car is going to feel a lot more understeery than it ever would if you're riding in the clean air. However, you have so much of that throttle input as a huge crash unfolds on the front straightaway off turn 4. There's trouble for Ross Harlow in the 16. Mentioned the deep start for Harlow tonight. And for him, it results in early race trouble at lap number 4. Saw some cars squabbling for position at the exit of 4 that last time by. Doesn't appear that there's too much damage on the Till Valhalla Project number 16 machine, similar scheme that he ran last season. And so he'll end up in the first bit of trouble. Christian McCrelly, who was one of the first drivers not to take a qualifying time tonight, will also be involved in his EP Lab Chevrolet. So we get a second look at how this all unfolded at the exit of turn 4, but all of a sudden it was just unraveled very quickly off the final corner. And here's a look from Harlow running in the middle of the pack. Brandon Banks not too far behind him, and Richard Swavely right in front. Oh, just nabbed the apron there in turns 3 and 4. That's not something you really find too common here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Oh, just a hit from Lauren Vincent as well. Some front-end nose damage will probably send the number 07 car to pit road for the first time tonight. But just a small mistake from Harlow trying to find any momentum on the inside of the racetrack. And we mentioned multiple lanes of use here at Las Vegas. At time, just trying to tire save. And on the inside of the racetrack, catching the transition from the apron to the actual racing surface, and that easily can bobble up a car and get them out of shape very early. So Harlow will be among some of the front-running drivers to come down pit road and lead this charge. As there's one Kyle Keith in his Tracker Boats Ford Mustang, a switch of manufacturers from Season 1 of this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series, making that move from Toyota over to the Ford Mustang Dark Horse as those drivers visit pit road for the first time tonight. So Muscarella leads them early. And for Ross Harlow, driver who came home 4th in that Daytona race last week, of course headlined by that Brandon Banks dub at the end of the overtime restart. But Ross Harlow, we've seen him have some stellar runs, especially back in 2025. Was able to grab at least one victory in the season. weaved his way through the playoffs. And while it didn't end in the way that car number 16 wanted it to, Harlow looking for a bit of a bounce back here in 2026. But still a lot of work to do from the back end of the grid as he continues to work it. The Augusta, Maine native driving for that DTH Racing team, one that Steven Stempion has formed that has created such a close bond with drivers like a Stephen Harlow and Ross in that group. They have really been able to stretch out their advantage as a team. And at Daytona, plenty of those super speedway races. We'll see it with Echo Park in a couple weeks' time, just how important that teamwork is going to play a role in the way that momentum shifts and the way that these teams work together in tandem or not in any of those super speedway affairs. Right now, the focus is trying to get back on this restart, lap 7, where Muscarella will lead him out in front. Jaden Porter had a promising pressure point on the 48 of Muscarella exiting the final corner on the opening lap, but you saw a bit of the contact in the attempt to side draft that low Chevrolet just a bit further back in the exit of turn 4. And we're going to be talking about that sector of the racetrack so much because over the long run, it really tightens up. Drivers start to experiment more with different lanes, and we've seen often here at Las Vegas, drivers attempting to use the very top of the boards. It has worked for momentum. However, it is a point of the racetrack where you're using a bit less throttle. This car can start to unravel very quickly, and in the middle of traffic could feel even worse than it does on an opening jump when you've got fresh tires. Jaden Porter promising to be very aggressive, and he has been so far in the first few, has a second chance to nab the race lead from Muscarella, who has led all of the laps so far. Pace car makes its second trip to the entry of pit road. Muscarella and Porter, same front row from the initial start and through the Echo Park restart zone. Muscarella with a much better jump. Porter cannot resist and tries to hold the door for second. And now here comes Porter to the inside. Jaden Porter backed up at the right moment, using the draft up at front. And we've got a brand new race leader, but not so fast. Muscarella dives on the bottom shelf. Near contact between the two. Muscarella wants the lead back. And what a fight this is shaping up to be. Porter back on the inside. Watching the bumps in turn 1, Muscarella has the edge. Now here comes Bayens running from the top shelf. He'll have the nose in the space. He'll occupy it off of turn 2 on the back straightaway, and Jaden Porter in a mess early. And now here comes Stempion from the high side. Jaden Porter, the dominator of Dover earlier on in the first season of the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, and now attempting a full-time run here in 2026, falling back in the crutches of everybody in this top 5. Steven Stempion moves on by, and all of a sudden, Alex Muscarella has someone new to worry about. Matt Bayens making his way to the front. And just washes up at the exit of turn 4. Muscarella extends the gap, and the race will calm down for the race lead. About 2 car lengths between the front-running Chevrolets. It continues to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All of them Chevrolets at the front of this field here from Las Vegas. First proper battle in the midst of the group is just on the outskirts of the top 5. And you look further through this top 10, you watch the 43 machine of Garrett Walden in a battle with Bayens to start this race in the fight for 4th. And then behind him, Jesse Whittington driving his Nubuo Chevrolet as he holds on to position over the Ford Mustang of Justin who did drive a Chevrolet last season, making that switch over to the Ford Mustang Dark Horses. And in an attempt to have all these brand new teams in the 2026 schedule, you really find yourself with all of these alliances shifting weight, finding each other, all the rookie drivers being able to align. And Jesse Whittington, how great it is to welcome Whittington back into Dropping the Hammah Cup Series action, was a prime part of many Sunoco Cup Series races in its final season. Near race victories on several accounts. And Whittington hoping he can carry some of that late season momentum into a win or two, or maybe even a championship here in the second season of DTH Cup action. So again, us at the KBueno Racing Network, so happy to see Jesse Whittington back in it, and plenty of very much OG names from the old Sunoco Cup Series. Ray Rogers, as we mentioned, on the starting grid, back to join some of his fellow old friends. in this series, and fantastic to see the way it is all revamped and to bring in some of these new characters like a Matt Baynes, who is really adding on to the pressure on Alex Muscarella in these last few. And again, as we mentioned in our skmcars.com race analysis, no stage breaks, so you don't have a structured way to deal with strategy. More often than not, we saw on the 50-lap stage breaks from stages 1 and 2 back in 2025. How the drivers played that differently mentally because they had to deal with different types of strategy plays, and it was all about track position to get yourself a spot in the points. But now, not that it's a really problem, as Alex Muscarella is going to fade away from the race lead. Had a problem in turns 1 and 2. He'll be split in the middle, 3 wide. And what has happened to Muscarella? Gives up the lead and gives up more. Saw some smoke at the front end of turns 1 and 2, and Alex Muscarella from the race lead to out of contention early on at lap 15. And here's the second look. Oh, you just watch almost contact between Baynes and Muscarella, but that car was unsettled from the word go at the entry of turn 1, and a wonderful save by Muscarella, keeping it out of harm's way, but then re-emerging onto traffic, getting split in the middle 3 wide by several contenders. And all of a sudden, Alex Muscarella from the race lead back to 16th place. A drop from faith for Alex Muscarella, who will have to dig deep and try to find his way back through this field tonight. So he'll have to settle into some fantastic battles in the midst of this top 20. There is the Daytona winner from last season in Timothy Stubblefield, trying to fend off the 26 machine of Parker Bland. She was setting up a move in turns 3 and 4, but now we'll have to wave back as Jason Anderson attempts to move at the exit of 4. Alex Muscarella still trying to cut his teeth in the middle of this field after the give up of track position, and you work under the DBR number 8 machine of Kip Easley in the middle of 1 and 2. So Matt Baynes in all of that will take away the race lead, and at a fairly comfortable margin at about half a second, with Steven Stempion right behind him. Like Steven mentioned, track position is going to matter so crucially at this point of the race. And of course, if we end up stepping into long green flag run strategy, as being that car that was beat on the restart by Lawson Field, had to deal with a runner-up finish back then, and looking, of course, to open the floodgates. Only had a win last season at the Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway. It really sparked up the late season surge for this Droppin the Hammah Chevrolet and for Stempion himself. But looking in this season to really change the script, get back on the winning train, being able to dominate this series, and of course get his team a proper chance at winning a title at season's end. He still has some work to do to make up some time on Baynes, but carrying Jesse Whittington with him as the torchbearer in the middle of this front 3. So another thing we'll talk about, as we mentioned, the lack of stage breaks. You know, we have 100% fuel with these NASCAR Cup Series machines, so a lot of that time will be spent in staying out on the racetrack and worrying more so about the Goodyear Eagles, how long they can last you over a long green flag stretch at a track that, although it is more repaved and has more grip than other mile-and-a-halfs on the schedule, still does eat up the Goodyear Eagles quite a bit when you have them out for too long. But with the 100% fuel, you can go way more than 50 laps on a tank. And we saw with the stage breaks how the drivers pivoted a long green flag run strategy into practice to just stay out in front, be in the top 10, or of course try to go at it for winning the stage outright. But now without the stage breaks and without the structured caution setup, you don't have any of that going into play. So now you got to really think large picture. Anybody in this top 5 or top 10 has to start pondering about what they can do to set this run up if this race goes green, and of course, undercut or overcut, the dichotomy of man in a racing world like this, where you have to think about what strategy works the best at a mile-and-a-half like Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Good battle here inside the top 5. This is Justin Erb, that Home Depot Ford Mustang, weaving to the inside of Jaden Porter, who has already hemorrhaged a bit of that track position after he attempted pass for the lead on Alex Muscarella early on, but Porter not necessarily rushing in his efforts to weave back up to the field, and possibly a chance to just fall back in traffic, let this race decide itself for a little while, and then slowly but surely crawl back through the lineup. That's what we saw with Cedric Hunter, the Canadian, last season, right here at Las Vegas. It was a cooler track temperature. It was under the night sky and the lights in Las Vegas, Nevada, so it wasn't necessarily as hot of a track temp as we're seeing right now, as here comes Steven Stempion, a battle for the lead in turn 1. But it was all about being the best over a long run and being the most disciplined driver of the group. So if that can be in play for Jaden Porter, how rewarding it would be if he can find his way back up to the field. What a run off turn 2 from the high shelf. Jesse Whittington making a move from the summit and now peeking into the valley underneath Matt Baynes for the race lead at lap 24. And another brand new leader from Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Say hello to Jesse Whittington at the front. Stempion holds back on an attempted pass on Matt Baynes for second. And this Nubbo Chevrolet steps out ahead of the pack very early on in lap 24 as we approach the halfway mark of what would be 50 laps in this race. Just about a quarter of a quarter, if you will, through this race. And Jesse Whittington taking command up front by at least 2 car lengths. There's Stephen Harlow, driver of his number 6 Chevrolet, of course, joining that DTH group and changing numbers as well. Bared the number 11 last season in several events that he was nearly able to grab victory lane at, and plenty of one-on-one duels with Lawson Peel at the front. Plenty of those races lost for car number 11 at the time, making the switch to the number 6 car here in the 2026 season and bearing the font number of the legendary Greg Biffle, who passed away several months ago and will forever go down as a NASCAR legend. And plenty of the drivers on this DTH team have honored Greg Biffle with this number choice, whether it be Ross Harlow, who wears the number 16, whether it be the 19 car of Brad Fulham, and of course the 6 car tonight in Harlow, now working on Jaden Porter in the pass for 8th place. Look at our Charlie Meyer photography onboard camera. Same setup as last season for Harlow. And working the focus in this bump-filled turns 1 and 2. And you're already watching some of those drivers migrate to the higher lanes, let alone Jesse Whittington using the high side to take away second from Stempion. Stephen Harlow using the middle to get out of all those bumps in the middle of the corner. And we mentioned this next-gen car. With so much of that underbody downforce at play, it's not gone like it is at the short tracks and road courses that we'll see this season with the brand new higher output 750 horsepower package. This is still the 670 horsepower package used at all of the intermediate tracks with the full underbody diffuser in there. And the one thing that this next-gen car does not like in this brand new era of generation of car is any oscillation on the underneath. That's why at Auto Club Speedway, the first time the drivers were there in the real life, they had struggled a ton in 3 and 4 because of all those hefty bumps that sloshed around this race car and didn't give it a chance to add any downforce from the underside. And when that underbody downforce goes away, it becomes nearly impossible to save. And here at Las Vegas, it's a little bit different. Less than Las Vegas, or Auto Club Speedway rather, but this Las Vegas mile and a half does propose plenty of those challenges to the car, bouncing around in the middle of the corner and being able to stifle any amount of throttle being put into the middle of the apex. And that's what you saw there with Harlow, just working the bumps in 1 and 2, attempting to get around Jaden Porter. That setup has not been fully rewarded yet, and so he'll work on it once again and hit the reset button in the fight for 8th. So working lap 30 of 200 here in our second race of this 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season. And we mentioned the initial fall off from Alex Muscarella, near spinning in turn 1 from the race lead, dropped all the way back to 16th. He's +5 since dropping all the way in the mid-pack. Trying to find a way around the rookie Matthew Perusini in his Dynamite Chevrolet, and there's the switchback off turn 4. Huge momentum for the Lowe's Chevrolet. He'll peek underneath. He'll have a chance at Harlow up in front in turn 1. So at the head of the field is Jesse Whittington, pulling away by a few car lengths. Steven Stempion has also made headway out in front of the third place runner in Matt Baynes, who led a few laps tonight, now starting to get swallowed a bit by the pack behind him. Garrett Walden in the number 43 car is pushing forward. Justin Erb, we saw plenty of progress from him in the first stint of this race, just continues to add on to the speed early on. And just hanging around behind him is Daniel Holtzcroft, making another switch as well. from the 31 car last year, and a Chevrolet now running the Budweiser Ford Mustang Dark Horse as he attempts to run inside the top 5. And he'll continue to just keep on some of this pressure on that Home Depot Ford Mustang up in front of Justin Erb as they continue to separate in this long green flag stretch. So as we continue our broadcast here from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we're happy to now be joined by the driver and the analyst and the broadcaster who was part of the race last week at the virtual Daytona International Speedway, Francisco Bacallao. Francisco, welcome. Glad to have you with us, and glad that you covered last week at Daytona in what was a fantastic end to the race. Brandon Banks with the race victory, but as this field steps into Las Vegas, the overarching idea is that this is the first proper test for all those guys in the field, whether it be down to tire saving, overall discipline, or just outright performance for what we could see in the bulk of the 2026 season. How important is it to nail down this second race and this first mile-and-a-half affair to set up for what could be a very grueling midseason stretch?
Yeah, happy to be here, Kenneth, on the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. It's been a long weekend for me, but I'm here just in time. A little bit late, but better than never to be a part of this show here tonight from the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. First real test that these guys have. We went to the Super Speedway last week at Daytona, where all bets are off. You're in the pack, you're racing, saving fuel, being aggressive in a group of cars. This time, it's a little bit different. You have to manage your stuff, manage your lines, and you have to know when to push, know when not to push, know what kind of right moves to make, maybe when not to make those moves. And we've already seen a couple of instances of trouble for some drivers in certain instances, and that's going to be very much what we'll see the rest of the night.
And for those who don't know where Francisco was this past weekend, he was actually out in St. Petersburg, so covering the action with the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and also the IndyCar Series that ran at noon this afternoon. So you had a trek over from St. Petersburg down to Miami.
Yeah, it was a long day, but a fun weekend. I got to meet some around Pat. I was including Coke Series champion Parker White. Got to him earlier today watching the IndyCar race. He stuck around for the MX5 Cup and USF 2000 that's going on a little bit after the IndyCar race did, but immediately got on I-75 and headed down south. But got here, and now we get to watch some Droppin Hammah Cup Series action.
And a lot of promising drivers in this series. Of course, many of the returning production from 2025 and the inaugural season of DTH Cup action. And then plenty of those new names. Of course, Matt Bain leading some laps at the front. Jesse Whittington, although he was not technically a Sunoco Cup Series rookie not that long ago, he is a rookie in this series. So he bears the yellow stripes, although the drivers here in this series know him very, very well and know what kind of talent he holds behind the wheel. And Whittington, happy to be a part of this series, and he is leading this charge right now. It is impressive to see the way he is strategically pulled away from the field, and he's brought Steven Stempion in tow. Meanwhile, drivers like Matt Baines are starting to get corralled by this field. Jaden Porter right in front, Charles Stevens not too far behind, and the battle with Alex Muscarella continuing this comeback from the bit of a whoopsie back in turn 1.
We have a battle for the lead right now. Steven Stempion got to the inside of Jesse Whittington for the top spot, going back to turn number 1 now. And it's working for him. He's able to hold off the 88's attempts at trying to go to the top spot, but you got to think that 88 Stempion probably saved his tires a little bit better. We saw him play one of the more dominant figures in last season's race here at Las Vegas before ultimately losing out in overtime, but he knows his way around this racetrack, and you got to think if he gets a couple cracks at it with the 94, he could get past here before the pit stop sequence in about 20 laps.
And he's been running the bottom most importantly throughout this entire run, and it parlays back to exactly what I said earlier on in this show, is that what helped Cedric Hunter in the first run of the race last season was him just pure tire saving, running the bottom, not pressing the car too hard at this portion of the run. And at this point, what would have been 10 laps to go in stage 1 is now just 40 laps out of 200. So you don't have to worry about the brakes anymore. But it still comes down to how disciplined you want to be and how you push yourself to the front by the end of this when the cars start to separate. As you've watched between this top 3, caution flag will come out, though, 40 laps into the run. And all the way at the back, some trouble for David Durand and Parker Bland in the 26 car.
Very similar location to what we saw our last incident. That brought out the first caution in this race, just off of turn number 4. We're going to get a replay here and see what brings cause number 2 for action. There's Parker Bland in her 26. There's David Durand in the 94. And as looks like the 26 runs up to that third lane, tries to cut down at the same time that the 94 drifts up. A little bit of contact is enough to send the 26 in the wall. She comes back down, sends both of them spinning across the front stretch.
You saw Durand sort of straddle that seam in the middle of the racetrack, washed up high, and although it was minor contact, it was just enough to loosen up Parker Bland and get her sideways there off of turn 4, and then of course Durand being involved in that. And our second caution of the night comes at lap number 42 after the first early spillage came from the 16 machine of Ross Harlow, who since after the crash has recovered and has slowly worked himself up to 18th on the running order. So our second yellow of the night comes at a very interesting point, Francisco, because this is obviously the longest run we've had in this entire race. The tires are down to a minimum. Drivers were already starting to think about where their placement was going to be on pit road strategy. Now they will all come in on wholesale service. Everyone all coming in on pit road, led by Whittington, who has been so far the dominant force in the second part of the green flag run. Bit of a shove there from Steven Stempion coming on to pit road speed, but this is going to be important, Francisco. We've talked about how track position has mattered so much in this brand new iRacing Next Gen era. Going to be more important on who can come out of pit road with the head of steam.
It's going to be very important, so you want to make sure you're clean in and out of your stall. And we've seen if a setup is on the tight side, 2 tires can work. Even this far into the run, it wouldn't be out of the question to try 2 tires if it means getting your race car better. As one of the cars a little bit further back may have missed their stall. Up front, looks like everybody's up and away. We got a couple of takers. Steven Stempion's going to be the first off of pit road. Looks like it is those 2 tires for him, as I believe Timothy Stubblefield has had some trouble on pit road as well. He's scored right now on timing and scoring as the race leader, but he's all the way at the entrance of pit road, so may have gone past everybody there as Charles Stevens has worked his way up into third.
Look at the smile there from Stempion. Loved that pit stop sequence of 14.8 in the box. And you wonder what happened there to Jesse Whittington on his attempted entry into pit road. He had a 30.8 second stop. It was a rather long sequence on pit lane for Whittington. He gives up the race lead, and now we'll have to drop to near the end of the pack in order to catch back up to the group, now led by Stempion in front, who led 17 laps last time we were here back in Season 1. Garrett Walden, the rookie, on the outside in the front row as we get ready for green. And Chuck Stevens, Justin Erb, how about a start for them, being able to save their Goodyear Eagles and press on forward. And what I mentioned just a bit ago in that pre-race show, Francisco, and in that recap of the Season 1 race here, it was the start of a dominant campaign for Lawson Peel, who unfortunately not going to be in the field at all in this second season of DTH Cup action to try and defend his race wins and go at it for his first ever title in this revamped group. Now, all of a sudden, you have a blown open field, and while there were obvious contenders last season, you know, Cedric Hunters, the Steven Stempions, the Harlows of the world, now you add in the rookies, and you add in some of those drivers who had the experience from Season 1, taking over to Season 2, it has really taken the door wide open, and now, frankly, anybody could have a good night, have some success over long runs, and be able to prevail.
Yeah, for all intents and purposes, it could open the door a little bit more to more drivers. We saw Steven Stempion finish second to Lawson Peel. I can't count how many times off the top of my head, and this was one of those racetracks. So for Stempion's definitely going to try to look for the opportunity to make things happen here. He's got a really good shot. And for that 94, he sped on the pit lane entrance. He was approaching the pit lane line right as the timing starts, and it looks like he got a little bit of a tap by the 88 that possibly sent him over the limit. And unfortunately for the 94, iRacing caught him speeding on pit road. So he's probably not going to be too thrilled about that. But luckily for him, he's got a long, long ways to go in this race. Still over 150 to go. As we're back onto the green now, he'll be restarting in 28th.
Green flag comes out. Stempion steps out in front. Chuck Stevens, Garrett Walden in the immediate duel for the second spot in turn 1. Through the bumps, Muscarella washes up high, nearly gets into Justin Erb as they come down to the back straightaway. And here comes Walden, searching for second in turn 3.
Going to have a move to the inside, and what's going to be crucial for a lot of these drivers in this race, Kenneth, is if they can hold the paint all the way around. Green in particular, if you can stay on the bottom like that, you decrease the chance of the car getting tight on you and jumping up towards that outside hole in turn number 4. So if you can save your tires and hold the paint down, you'll have speed and longevity. So that was a really good move by the 43, but looks like this 84 is going to try to make a comeback here back in the 3 and 4 this time.
He's got a target on the Walmart Chevrolet. He'll duck to the underneath side in turns 3 and 4. That is the preferred line here at Las Vegas, especially on the fresh Goodyear Eagles, but all that momentum waving up high to the Walden machine, who will clear the 84 machine back into turn 1. They have really single filed out for the most part in this top 10, apart from this fight you're watching right now for the runner-up spot, which is definitely going to help Steven Stempion in his efforts to pull away from the field. But now you watch Jaden Porter, who kind of let the field through on the opening jump, Francisco, trying to search for the lead immediately on lap 1, was denied the opportunity and got the door shut in front of him, has just been meandering around 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th place. All of those placements is where Porter has found himself kind of bouncing around, and here he is underneath Matt Baynes for what is 6th place on the racetrack in turn 1.
And he's just kind of pacing himself, is Jaden. He's trying to figure out what the car is going to do in these conditions, but also who's racing against. He did make a few starts last season in this series, but he's not exactly familiar with everybody, especially the even newer faces. So he's still trying to get used to it, trying to see how he can push or maybe how he can save his. This is one of them. So he's going to have a long time to build that kind of trust and see who does what before he can try to maybe change his attack in the second half of this race. You see him get passed by Baynes on 3 and 4 last time, and now Stephen Harlow goes by him on the outside of 6.
Possible trouble on the horizon for Jaden Porter, because there are way more cars in the rear view mirror. Daniel Holdcroft is there, battle for position between Jason Anderson, that Taco Bell Chevrolet on the outside, and then that bright yellow number 96 number, a very colorful Chevrolet for Matthew Perusini. And all the way behind them is not only where you find Ross Harlow in his continued efforts to weave back up to the field after the early race trouble to bring out the first yellow of this race. Behind him, just kind of hanging around in the background, is Cedric Hunter, the Canadian who made it all the way to the championship round last season and put on a stunner of a show back in 2025 and the early 26 editions of the first season in this series, and is slowly waltzing his way up through the field in sort of an opposite stretch from what he did last season, Francisco. He started this race last year in P6. He had some trouble midway. He had one of the better long-run cars to win stage number 1, and then it just unraveled from his fingertips, getting involved in a sizable accident late in the going, which ended up resulting in a 23rd place finish. Obviously not reflective of what the rest of the season would hold for this Hello Kitty Toyota Camry, but starting deep in this field, not setting a qualifying effort, and just slowly getting his way into the top 15. Although he's got pressure from the high side, that's Warren Kyle Keefe into turn 1.
As he's battling for the position. And they're side by side. 1 and 2. You see the different lanes that drivers are using on this side of the racetrack. You might see more variance of that as the race goes on. In 3 and 4, we might see more drivers maybe try to stick to that bottom, but you won't see some drivers shy away from using that upper lane. If you could carry the momentum nicely enough, you can gain some more positions. For Hunter, it's all about just trying to play it patient in the early stages. Everybody else trying to see if they can make up some positions and then get into a rhythm.
And of course, that idea of stepping out of dirty air. You don't want to be in the turbulent air like Chuck Stevens is right now. That bobbled him at the exit of turn 2 and allowed Herb in that Home Depot Ford Mustang to stretch out his advantage, which is currently just about 2 or 3 car lengths back to Stevens, as Matt Baynes and Stephen Harlow potentially engage in battle at the exit of the final corner. So as a driver here, Francisco, of course, you had the longest green flag run. You learned a lot from there. And then you look at what's going on here in this early portions of the second run. And drivers are already being more eager to work their way up the racetrack. How do you balance yourself going up to the high side, using the middle, or using the bottom? And what's that methodology in changing your lines any given lap to find speed?
You have to be prepared to go from one extreme to another. It's not easy, as the 92 for a moment clips the apron just up the racetrack, but he'll hold on to that car for now. It's all about just making sure you can change from one lap to another. Be ready for it, because Kyle Larson's talked about it in the past. If you've heard any interviews of him, as contact there between the 92 and the 96. There goes the 96 sideways in front of the field. What a wreck avoidance there by everybody, as they're all going to scamper down the back straightaway to get by the 96. Matthew Perusini with an incredible save off of turn number 2. But to finish the point there, Kenneth, if you run the wall, you have to not hit the wall if you want to have any speed but you can't just go up there and run it. He's talked about that he has to work his way up to the outside, and once he's there, he's in a rhythm, which is why we've seen, historically speaking, in his earlier days of his career, when Larson would jump up to the high side, straight off a lap or two, he'd usually get into that outside wall and really scrub some speed off his, at the time, 42 Chevrolet, and if you run the bottom, well, it's a little bit easier because you're almost always running the bottom. So it's just being able to have that interchangeability of going top, bottom, without really costing yourself time and not damaging your race car.
And this is a pure view right now from Richard Swavely, who's right around Matthew Pericini on such a fantastic save out of turn 2. That car was nearly junk on the back straightaway. Middle 3 wide, eye of the hurricane, and now finally settling into just underneath the top 15. And being able to clear himself for just a moment as Bland and Swavely hit the outside wall off of turn 2. Pericini straddling the apron just like Harlow did to begin this race. But another fantastic save for Pericini. And again, middle 3 in turn 1.
All over this racetrack we have right now. 3 wide on occasion. What a move there to the inside for Jesse Whittington, trying to just continue the comeback efforts. He hasn't really gained that many spots as I'm sure as he's wanted to. He's gotten his way up to 21st, but it's just so difficult to really make these passes with the next gen. And you consider the track temperature that these guys are having to deal with. Yeah, it's pretty early in the day. It's 91 degrees out there on the track right now, so not cold, but in the day races that we usually see here at Las Vegas, they can soar upwards of 100, 110 degrees and more in some cases. But right now, it's a little bit on the cool side. Everybody's going to have a little bit more grip than maybe they otherwise would. So it allows for them to stay on the throttle more. It makes it a lot more difficult to take advantage of when to make those passes.
And Pericini, you're watching, still cutting through the middle of this field and trying to recuperate, regather himself. Driver who started on the outside of the front row at Daytona last week, but didn't reflect into a positive finish. Pericini in his first DTH Cup Series affair, 21st at the end. And, of course, looking for a bounce back of momentum in this brand new system that is going to reward a ton of that consistency by the end of the season, Francisco, in a wave of changes that this DTH Cup Series admin team has made to improve the racing, to get some of those drivers into this series and have a bit of fun. Of course, with the likes of eliminating the stage breaks so you don't have that mentality of working towards a given stage finish and having some points. But, of course, the playoff system, that seems to have gone away as well. A chase system now in effect, much like it is in real-life NASCAR Cup Series action. So you really do have that way of finding consistent finishes to end up as a championship favorite. Caution flag waves. It's trouble on the back straightaway. Lauren Vincent and Sheldon Hart, pair of the Chevrolets, halted on the inside of the backstretch wall.
Trouble for the third time this evening. This time a new pair of faces off of turn number 2, and let's see what happened. It looks like possibly the 07 may have just ran out of grip, starts drifting up the racetrack, tags the outside wall, and yep, there he goes, spinning down the inside, and collects the 74, had nowhere to go.
You're at the mercy of that car on the outside. We'll take a second look here from the onboard look of that number 74 machine. Very colorful wins car for Sheldon Hart. Sees the car on the right side flank, and there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, if you're Sheldon Hart, there's just nothing you could have done there. 07 tags the wall, obviously bounces off of it, and you just happen to be there. So unfortunate for him that he's going to have some damage to contend with in the rest of this race. But you just kind of have to deal with that when that happens to you in that instance. Let's see what the move is here. As the field may try to flank, and Garrett Walden is going to bite. He'll be the one to go down pit road. Not many others appear to be going down with him. Looks like maybe the first one on back to go in includes the, let's say that's the 12 or the 23 rather, and then the 45 a little bit further back. So not many drivers into the pit lane here on lap number 63. Still early days in this race, but maybe a little bit of fuel, right side tires could give you a little bit more grip than they otherwise would. Certainly could help them try to make a charge in the latter portion of this run if that keeps up.
There's Charles Van Schaik coming in and out of pit road. Didn't seem like there was a stop in the essence for him at all. One of those free agent independent drivers in this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series on a group that was really relied around some of the alliances you see, Droppin the Hammah and that DTH team pretty much expanding with some of the new entrants this season. Cypress Academy, you know, they add drivers like a Garrett Walden, who did come down pit road, a Jesse Whittington, and the aforementioned Perusini, Chuck Stevens, who has had such a phenomenal race tonight, running in the top 5 for a bulk of the runs. He's there. SKM has kept their same core: Parker Bland, Richard Swavely, Warren Kyle Keith. You know, they add Justin Erb, Kevin Roy, some of those who were on different teams last season. But you still have those independents in store. Sheldon Hart, also one of them. And funnily enough, Cedric Hunter, who was part of that Category 5 esports team last season that ended up winning the championship with Zachary Hall at the end of the Homestead Miami race, they are no longer a group. Zachary Hall is not coming back as we see it to defend his title from last campaign. So Hunter kind of working all by himself as the lone wolf. It's a little bit interesting. It almost looked like that team would recuperate and get back in action, run it back this season, but Cedric Hunter's going to try and do it all by himself.
In a similar sense, I guess, to KBueno Racing, we saw them make a couple of appearances with multitude of drivers last season, but looks like the only one that they're going to have this time out is going to be Jaden Porter in that 82 machine. So it's going to be interesting to see how these independent drivers work, not just on these regular racetracks where you kind of usually fend for yourself anyways, but on super speedways, since it's so teammate dependent, you have to have a pair of drivers that you're familiar with, or a group of guys that you're comfortable with, to make certain strategy calls. And if you don't really know them, then you're just kind of flying in there blind, and that can make things very difficult. But, you know, to tag on to your point, Kenneth, as there's Steven Stempion enjoying the view out front, that chase format's really going to make these drivers just try to prioritize the points finishes. They're not going to go too crazily, I would think, for race wins given an opportunity. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, if depending on their circumstance. But it's all about just making sure you get the best finish possible. If you crash out in a race or get some kind of damage, it's going to be about just running to the end, trying to be either at the finish and gain as many spots as possible, or you can be like Tyler Reddick and just try to win every race anyway.
Yeah, he's undefeated in 2026, something that I don't think a lot of people had on their bingo card, to go 3 for 3, something that hasn't been done in NASCAR Cup Series action since 1949. Steven Stempion wants to go 1 for 2 here in 2026, and a beautiful launch on the front straightaway off of the restart zone. Justin Erb with a head of steam. He'll clear for second in turn 1. What a drive by Erb on a race-high second.
What a move for Erb, but you saw how quickly Steven Stempion locked in on that restart. He was laughing, having a good time under the pace car, probably talking with his teammates, and as soon as we get to that restart zone, time to go back racing, game face on, is ready and on it, gets a great restart, hangs out in front, but another good restart for Porter as well. He's clipped his way up into 4th, was looking to the inside of Muscarella for the 3rd place position. He may be under fire now from Charles Stevens into turn 1. So the 20 and the 82 have made some good moves on this restart to gain a couple of positions. Those tires, though, first one on those tires is Garrett Walden and Jesse Whittington. They're in the middle of the pack right now, trying to see whatever moves they can make.
And in the limelight of Alex Muscarella, that shallow mistake in turn 1 off of the air pushed for Matt Baines running in second. It sent this 48 car sideways, and maybe for a split second, this car was going to be out there and out of this race completely. But Alex Muscarella dropped all the way to 16th and just put his head down and got back to work. And over the course of these several green runs, Muscarella has found his way to fight for second place off of a touch of the outside wall from Justin Erb. Here comes Muscarella to the inside in turn 3. No response from Erb as he bounces up the high groove. And Alex Muscarella on a comeback drive makes his way to the runner-up spot.
He's got some speed. That 48 does, and if you remember Muscarella last season, it was a struggle. He had some speed, but he was always struggling in these races, just trying to be there at the end, and some bad luck would always turn his way. Had a rocky start to this race after a really good qualifying effort at the 48, but this time he's showing speed, Kenneth. He definitely has looked a little bit more competitive this time around in Season 2, and he's looking for that kind of speed and luck this time around, trying to get back to victory lane for the first time in a while.
Someone who in his Sunoco Cup Series career had been able to find victory lane at least a time or two, but his best finish in Droppin the Hammah Cup Series action, 4th. And the last time he did that was back in mid-June, late June of 2025 at the virtual Bristol Motor Speedway. But that's really the last time we saw Muscarella dominantly lead laps and be a proper contender at the front of this field. Now tonight, it is starting to become a very different story, as look at the gaggle of machines in the middle of this group. Ray Rogers among those, trying to fight their way. Matt Baines, Jesse Whittington, and all these cars with different missions, 2 by 2, like a super speedway race back to turn 1.
Yeah, and Whittington was on those tires. You remember, he came down pit road on this caution. We'll tag the outside wall a little bit, but he's already worked his way to the outskirts of the top 10. That's Ray Rogers in the 51. That's holding the 10th position as it is. And look at the 94. Finally gets up to the top side and is going to take him 3 wide. Get 3 for 1, really. What a move by the 94. Gets back up to 8th. He is charging that 43 a little bit further back, trying to do the same thing. Maybe hasn't quite done it to the same extent. But it's a great move for this 94. And how about Ray Rogers, Kenneth? Last week in Daytona, it was a struggle for the 51. Missed the initial start of the green flag and went a lap down. And despite not that many yellows, they were just ill-timed for him. It was never the first car one lap down. Never was able to get the wave ramp. And it was basically just trying to race with 1 foot tied behind your back the whole time. And I'm sure he's looking for a clean slate here in Las Vegas. At least early on in this one, it's a lot better.
Definitely a much better start tonight, and I was immediately talking about, Francisco, how good it was to just have him in this series after being a legend in the Sunoco Cup Series. As Perusini finds his nose to the outside, and they're middle 3 wide. Chuck Stevens on the inside losing track position, and Rogers noses ahead in turn 3. But a driver who is tied for 4th on the all-time wins list, counting Sunoco Cup history. Someone who was at once a dominant force with the old Gen 6 cars, and in this next-gen era, it's great to see Rogers still hanging around on iRacing and still competing with some of his old friends. As he forces the inside there on Perusini, makes the move for 11th on the racetrack. So you saw that daring outside move of 3 wide for Jesse Whittington. Of course, Francisco in that attempted comeback after speeding on pit road. So much like Alex Muscarella, Whittington in the same ship, just trying to course correct here at lap 73. About 27 laps from the official halfway mark tonight, as Jaden Porter and Justin Erb squabble up for 3rd in turn 1.
It's been a good effort for this 94. It's about a 20-lap difference on tires between himself and most of everybody he's around at this point, as Porter makes the move. Stick off of turn number 2 now moves up into the podium position. But that 94, he is charging. He is consistently putting some really good lap times together, about a 10th or 2 quicker than the race leader consistently, and that's in traffic trying to make moves, so I'm sure it's not as quick as it can be. But there he goes now to the outside of Stephen Harlow and back into the top 5 if he can complete the pass off of turn number 2 for this 94 machine. He's finding speed on that outside. As long as he can get clean air like this, he is rolling, moving, and his next target is that 20 of Justin Erb.
And now he is the front-running, freshest tire car in this race. He pitted about 12 laps ago, so about a 20-lap difference from himself and all of these heavy front-runners that are currently leading the charge at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So there is a clear advantage. There, of course, is a hunger for Jesse Whittington to visit victory lane 1, but most importantly, get back on track. And he felt that opposite strategy to slap on some 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles and get to work, it has seemingly stepped out in his favor. Whittington pointing to the inside of Justin Erb, and this front row duel will be back 4th and 5th place, entering turns 3 and 4 with Whittington on the fresher tires still moving up to the front. The next fresh tire car, you have to go all the way back to Garrett Walden, the 43 machine who did lead the field on the pit road under that last stretch of the caution flag. He's in a fight with Ross Harlow, currently for 8th place. And when you come down pit road, obviously for Whittington, this is a strategy call to give himself track position as this race continues. However, overall, you think of the grander picture of this, and where do you think of it going if it stays green and as we near halfway, which will be a pivotal part of the race regardless?
Well, a big thing about the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series, Kenneth, and what it's been known for is having 100% fuel fill. That didn't change over the off-season, so we still have a equal-sized tank as the real-life series have at their disposal. So you could expect these guys to get about 60 to 65 laps possibly on a full fuel tank. You think about the lap they pitted about 15 ago on lap 63 or so. That puts them right on the edge of a possible fuel window to one-stop this race to the end. They can probably do another 45 to 50 laps. That'll put them somewhere in the vicinity of lap 135, give or take. That's right on the cutting edge of being able to one-stop this race, possibly with some caution helping everybody staying out, I'm sure. But if they get the track position, even if that doesn't work out, they get the track position. So if this goes green, they're in a really good spot to try and make this work. But even if the yellow comes out, at least for the 94, if he's able to get to the lead when it's all said and done, I'm sure he'll be happy about it. Now he's to the inside of Jaden Porter, takes third away, and at the same time nearly got to the inside of Muscarella. So it's a three-way fight for second as we speak, as there's Matthew Parasini also looking to make a fair share of moves. He's trying to get into the top 10. And a little bit further between the sandwich of those tire colors is Garrett Walden. He's worked his way up to 7th now, sits behind, or just got past Warren Calkeet for that position. Now he's trying to chase down Harlow and Erb as they're nearly 3 wide. As that looks like it's Muscarella to tag the outside wall. Once again, he's going to lose out those positions as Whittington now, with the outside advantage, is going to get a run on Jaden Porter on the floor.
And there was assisted contact out of turn 2. Porter had knocked the side of Alex Muscarella's Chevrolet near the outside wall as Whittington was putting on the pressure to the inside and continues to flare from the high groove using the wall to try and get around the Louisville, Kentucky native of Jaden Porter. And again, like you mentioned in this strategy, even if it's not a one-stop and a yellow flag comes out at an awkward time, Whittington can run long enough where he will have the track position plus the opportunity to visit pit road with everyone else and have a win-win situation. Not only will he have fresh tires, but he will have a spot good enough to give him at least a range of attack into the race victory. He's still 0.7 of a second beyond Steven Stempion, who stretched out his gap up in first with 18 laps to go until the official halfway home mark here from Las Vegas, Nevada. What a drive it's been for Jesse Whittington just to get back in this game and make himself a proper contender. 3-way fight for 6th place. Another fresh tire car, and Garrett Walden is attempting to hold off some competition. Harlow behind, Matthew Parasini not too far away, and Warren Kyle Keith, who was at one point making a defensive stance on Walden for that top 6 position, has seemingly fallen back in the background, and the Walmart Chevrolet will start to creep up closer to this top 5. And that's really where it gets dangerous, Francisco, when you've got enough of a run, as Jesse Whittington just about met the outside wall, gave it a kiss off of turn 2, and now here comes Jaden Porter back to the high side as there's trouble on the back straightaway. Warren Kyle Keith sideways.
Yeah, trouble all up and down the field there on that particular lap. Kenneth here on lap 83. Good save by Whittington. Lost the spot to Porter right as the caution comes out, so it's one less position he'll have. And now he's going to be on the flip side of the strategy. So this is actually probably not exactly the right position you want to be in. If the caution came out maybe 10 or 20 laps later, it's everybody comes down pit road. Now he's going to have a genuine question on his hands. Does he stay out with most of the field like going to be coming in? And for Warren Kyle Keith was making a move. There's a little bit of contact with, looks like, Ross Harlow, and it's enough to send the 24 around. Looks like a little bit of contact with the 51. Luckily for everybody else, no contact.
So Rogers with the hit, Warren Kyle Keith sideways, and that slap up against Ross Harlow. And this is what happened to Jesse Whittington, just near the boards, a little too eager. And as the trouble was unfolding behind, Jaden Porter making the switch around to the outside for 2nd place. And now that this run has extended by quite a bit, the leaders running on what is lap 41 of their stint, so about equidistant from their long green flag run to begin this race. Even after the Ross Harlow yellow, a ton of drivers just stayed out, felt it was too early to make their trip
Whittington
and get some
out.
service. Whittington will stay out, so Whittington does not get baited on the call to visit pit lane. Steven Stempion will lead the field in on a 42-lap run. And not only will Whittington stay out, there will be a duo of cars that also follow suit in the tracks of Whittington. Matthew Parasini, we saw him visit pit road the same time as Whittington did. He will stay out, and so will the number 26 of Parker Bland, looking to grab some crucial track position as we near halfway.
And they kind of have to, Kenneth, because they were on that different strategy call. It was right on the lap where it's like, do I pit? Do I not? It's a genuine question as you see the race off pit road, Stamping over Porter and Herb. They genuinely had to ask themselves, do we pit? Because if you do pit, you do fall a tire set without really having the proper track position at the time. You knew everybody else would pit, but you were hoping in that instance, if a yellow did come out, it's either early in the run or a little bit later in the run, maybe say, like I said, 15, 20 laps in. Then that way everybody would come back in for tires no matter what strategy call you were on. So for them, it was in an awkward position, but we'll have to see how they work this out as we're going to be caught up here with Warren Kyle Keith.
And now we're brought up Warren Kyle Keith here, involved in one of this latest skirmishes to bring out the yellow. Warren, what did you see there off of the incident in turn 2 from your eyes?
Yeah, 16 got tight. I mean, turn 2 has been the tightest corner on the racetrack all night. It's just, I mean, he was just trying to get it run there, and that's fine. But man, you know, we were ripping the boards like we always do and making some good time. But I guess we'll just have to do what we did before and just come from the back again and rip the boards again.
I mentioned that in the prelude from the starting grid that this is your kind of racetrack because you like to flirt with the high side. You like to run the high side at all times to find momentum. What have you learned so far through the long green flag runs we've had so far in this race?
The fact that we start the session out at 0% race rubber on the racetrack has made the track a lot wider than it would be. So, again, admin team, thanks for letting us do that. And it's made the race fantastic. We're running boards, we're running down to the white line, and probably one of the best Vegas races I've ever been in, just because we can choose whatever we want to do, and it's all quick.
All right, Warren. Well, of course, we appreciate the time. Hopefully, this is a turnaround for you on the restart. Best of luck.
Appreciate it.
That's Warren Kyle Keith, driver for the SKM team, as he did last season, as we are ready for the restart here, lap number 87 of 200. So it's Jesse Whittington at the front of this field. He chooses the outside lane on the front row with rookie Matthew Perusini on the inside. Parker Bland, a part of that trio of cars that we see at the front that have stayed out on their set of Goodyear Eagles, is third. Charles Van Schaik will run on the outside in fourth, also staying out. Steven Stempion and Jaden Porter will occupy row number 3 as the first proper cars on the newest set of tires. Pace cars down through the Echo Park Automotive Restart Zone. Jesse Whittington brings them back underway.
And you can see the guys on tires, they were trying to be steady and trying to see if those front get any decent of a launch. They do, and now there's a little bit of a gap between Stempion and Porter and the rest of those. As Porter peeks to the outside of 23, and he gets there. So now he has the track position on the outside lane to try and make up these moves. There's Parker Bland settling in third. Stempion splits the 23 through the middle. They may try to do the same with Bland here off of turn 4, and they will. They
flushed Van Schaik now off of turn 4. They're going to put Parker Bland in the middle of the hurricane in turn 1. Near contact with Porter. Porter slings up from the high side, still door to door. In the fight for third place, Jaden Porter noses ahead at the exit of turn 2. And what a way to dive through some of the older tire traffic in successive fashion. Now they'll work on Perusini. It's Porter who makes the step out first. Whittington not too far behind by a few car lengths, and looming in the distance is the Ally Chevrolet back to turn 1.
Just one more to go before he can get into the clean air and the track position. And it was huge for Porter because he's gotten ahead of what was one of the fastest cars on the same strategy, and that's the 88 of Steven Stempion. There's 94 up the track, makes a little bit of a block, a little bit of a bump there by Porter. Here comes Stempion out of the bottom.
And 3 wide for the race lead in turn 3. Whittington gives way. Battle for the lead. Porter and Stempion not going to give it up at the exit of 4. Porter will lead the lap to lap 90. And how aggressive do you want it here at Las Vegas? This is putting all the chips on black. Jaden Porter to the race lead.
It almost looked like it was lap 189 with the way those moves were being made down the backstretch of the previous lap. That you saw Whittington was hoping to try and protect it at least for a little bit longer, but just the inevitability of the tires, the same way he was able to come through the field, now these guys are doing the same thing. Porter gets to the front after a little bit of a tap there, nearly opened the door for Steven Stempion. Stempion will have to settle into second, but how about Alex Muscarella gotten himself up to third in the process here? He sits behind those two, as further back looks like Matthew Perusini continues to drop. Justin Erb has continued to make some decent headway, but Stempion's not exactly let our leaders go. He is very much there battling for the top spot.
Gonna keep Porter in range, and that's exactly what helped him extend his advantage so early on in this event, was just hanging back in traffic, waiting for the moment to strike. And then when it did, just seizing the opportunity. Look at this mess of cars back from 12th on back. Van Schaik playing defense, holding on to the wall. That's Cedric Hunter cutting through the middle 3 wide to make his way up to 13th. Parker Bland making sure she can keep a defense up. As to the inside goes Richard Swavely. And now Brad Fulham and the 24 machine of Warren Kyle Keith trying to recover after this most latest spill at the exit of turn 2. Hunter pushes forward while Stempion puts the pressure on Jaden Porter. He's within a car length back to 1, and he'll look for the opportunity from the high side.
And Mescal is there too, so it's a proper three-way fight for the lead right now. And it's all about which lane they can run. Porter's going to try to protect the bottom as much as he can. Obviously, it's the line where you can save your tires the best. But if he can also, at the same time, place his car right in front of that 88, kind of neutralizes whatever Stempion can do as long as that continues to happen. So it really buys himself some time, even if he isn't able to save his tires, because it probably will hurt the 88 more than it does hurt the 28 as he gets a little bit of a bobble there entering turn 1. That's going to allow both of these guys to make a run here.
And remember, these are teammates for Droppin the Hammah, so they could work in tandem, but for right now, it's all about the individual effort. Alex Muscarella from the top shelf. Stempion with that head of steam off of turn 2. Does not elect to use it. Muscarella's going to put himself in as the pick in this party. 3-car fight for the lead, 6 laps from halfway home here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And Stempion moves out in front, switches ahead of the 48 Lowe's Chevrolet, and will hit the reset button and try again. As behind him, Stephen Harlow has moved out in front to the top 5. Justin Erb, who was just playing defense for a little while, had to step back and wait for the moment to give him any sort of recap. And Ross Harlow also stepping forward. So the Harlows in tandem, working together. And Harlow after the deep start. And then, of course, the spin off of turn 4 to bring out the first yellow. How about this slow, successive move for Harlow tonight in that TVP Chevrolet, working on the underside of Justin Erb here off turn 2.
Is that a good recovery as Ross Harlow so far? And a little bit behind that 16. You see the 94 is continuing to drop back after the old tires. His work is falling down to 10th right now. As there's the view from Harlow, and you see he has that orange tape. Not many drivers use that orange tape to indicate which way goes straight. For the 16, but the 16 has that. You see just how much left input he's putting for his own personal settings for his wheel, coupled with whatever he may run on the setting. A lot of guys will use maybe, I believe, somewhere in the 3s for the pinion, trying to get a little bit less overall range, allows them to save it. Others will try to aim maybe closer to 1, and they have a lot more wheel movement area. But all that comes down to personal preference, and having that tape visually there on your own wheel. I don't have that. I can't say if I know if many people have that on their own sims. I don't think you do, Kenneth. I don't remember seeing it on yours, but for some people it is helpful.
I do. On the Logitech G923, they have a bit of blue strip on the top end of the wheel, so that does help you align yourself with what is straight on the racing wheel. However, it kind of does brush off a little bit, so it becomes a silver over time as it wears down, but still looks very good and still a good indicator as well. And glad to see that perspective there from Ross Harlow, giving us a shot of his sim rig as he runs through the field like he did last season. So a big shout out to all the drivers who have enabled their cameras this season and has allowed us to dive into their dimension of what they see when they're driving in their sim rigs at home and here on iRacing. What makes it so special is that we get to see their reactions. We get to see their different setups, racing from all across the country, and even in some leagues internationally are able to race outside of the U.S. and make their run at leagues exactly like this. Here's some great battles inside the top 20. There's Jason Anderson weaving his way to 18th in front of Charles Van Schaik. Ray Rogers got a piece of that front-end damage. He has worked his way back to the top 20 after the scuffle there with Warren Kyle Keith. Daniel Holtzcroft back in his number 4 machine. And then Timothy Stubblefield alongside Kevin Roy. Those two cars 22nd and 23rd on the racetrack. And all the way in the back is where you find Garrett Walden. So a huge switch up from not that long ago where he had some fresh tires. We're weaving his way through the top 10. All of a sudden, Francisco, things have changed in an instant. And when it does like that, and when the strategy doesn't exactly fall in your favor, although Walden did have a rather long pit stop at about 30.6 seconds, how do you find your way back in it? You understand there's still another half of this race to go, but what is the first immediate thought on the way back to the front of the field?
It's a frustrating feeling when you get on that strategy and see it's working out. So at that point, you're just hoping either the caution comes out very late before you have to pit, so you can trap the field a lap down, or it doesn't come out at all, especially in their case where they could have maybe stretched it to 1 pit stop. But to happen where it did, where it was around the point where they're tires definitely dropped off, and everybody else had to pit, it was a lose-lose situation. That's the bullet you bite when you try to go on that kind of strategy. Unfortunately, they're paying the price for it right now, so I'm sure they're hoping for a quick caution. Maybe most of the field will stay out if that were to happen, and they would come down pit road, and you essentially get the flip situation back to their side of them charging up through the field this time. So we'll see what happens here just past the halfway point. Stempion continues to run in second. Porter's done a nice job now, has gotten a little bit more comfortable with the race car, with the track, and is now leading this thing. And everybody's kind of settling out. We know Porter isn't one of those drivers that normally uses up the goodie in their tires. He's normally able to save his tires pretty decently enough as a multi-time winner in the 4-wide racing series at some tracks that have excessive tire wear, say like Nashville, Darlington, among all their racetracks that he's gotten victories at. Chicagoland most recently, that is. So Porter does a good job. He's been successful around these racetracks and against some of this competition that the ones he has raced against, and right now it is showing.
And it was pure domination back at the Monster Mile, Dover Motor Speedway, another one of those kind of concrete, heavy tire wear tracks that require so much discipline behind the wheel. And that was Porter's sole win in his rookie campaign in this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series last season, and looking for a more full-time effort this time around on the lone representation for KBueno Racing. Steven Maggio, who won a couple races in the series last season. Ethan Fonseca Moreno also there last season. They are not represented here in 2026. So it's all Jaden Porter to carry the torch and try to enable that further success across many a different next-gen league here on iRacing, as Alex Muscarella tries to pump up this move on his fellow teammate in Steven Stempion. But in the midst of it all, Francisco, they have not escaped the rest of the top 5. You watch in the background, Stephen Harlow just continues to find his way in fourth. Justin Urban, Ross Harlow, although they're close enough to engage in a one-to-one combat, they are still within range. Quite the opposite from what we've seen in the longer green flag runs tonight, where the top 3 have clearly made themselves known as the front-running contenders without any proper opposition from those fourth on back. Not sure if that's the methodology of the tire saving or whether it's just too early in the run to make that happen. However, for at the moment, Francisco, rest of the top 5 and even a bit of the sneaky top 10. Drivers like Brandon Banks in a race high 7th, Matt Baines back in 8th, and Chuck Stevens, who's recovered back to 9th in the top 10. But they're still within range, so a possible chance for them to gain some more as the race holds on.
And if there's anything I've learned over the past couple of weeks is don't count out Brandon Banks quite yet. Was the winner at Chicagoland last season, and most recently went to victory lane at Atlanta in the 4-wide series, and even had a comeback effort going at Phoenix, or Charlotte most recently as well, where just out of nowhere shows up towards the front end of the field and gets great results when it's all said and done. So Brandon Banks right now running 7th, just past the halfway point. As this race goes on, it's something about those drinking bros guys. They just find that speed in the second half of these races and they put themselves in position, and at a mile and a half, Brandon Banks can certainly do that.
So cathartic, that big-time victory to get him into the championship round at Kansas Speedway, which to this day is his last mile and a half, Droppin the Hammah Cup Series victory. Very late in the season, a surge of momentum for him, who, like we've seen in other leagues across iRacing, the just flat-out consistent efforts that Brandon Banks can pursue at any given racetrack that is in this intermediate style, regardless of the surface and regardless of some of its configuration. You know, Chicagoland has a different type of system than a track like Las Vegas Motor Speedway, of course, and then Atlanta Motor Speedway, although in this series we run the Super Speedway version, out in 4-wide racing, ran the old 2008 scan where Brandon had found his place at home and ended up in a sweet spot in the final run to win that race. You can never really count him out of the equation, like you said, Francisco, and that's kind of what makes a driver like Brandon Banks so dangerous. A part of a DBR team that with Lawson Peel dominated the calendar with 9 race victories. Brandon Banks getting a pair of wins as well. Kip Easley having some strong runs at the front in given races in the season. So DBR with plenty of experience at the helm. And it's Brandon Banks who's leading that charge at the moment, currently running in 7th place. It's Ross Harlow out in front of him, potentially running out to the inside of Justin Erb. So we've seen these two within at least a car length over the last few laps and setting mirror lap times, although Banks is just a hair faster. Of course, all in the effort to make this play and potentially strategize themselves for a run at the finish here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. As we run 111 laps deep in this 200-lap affair and 300-mile run from the desert in Las Vegas, Nevada. How about we turn the sounds up and crank it up on the KBueno Racing Network. Beautiful sights, beautiful sounds here at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. You can't ask for more than that. Jaden Porter enjoying the view up at the front of this field, and now an extended gap to the runner-up in second place in Steven Stempion. What at once was about a car length or two of an advantage for the Kentucky native of Porter, it has easily opened up, and Porter stretching his legs at the front, a near second full of a gap between himself and Stempion running behind. Muscarella has given up some time on the second place car and is now running in the clutches of Stephen Harlow and Justin Erb, and even a bit of Brandon Banks and Ross Harlow, who have seemingly started to move their way up through the field. Brandon Banks making an effort to make another progression up to sixth place. But Francisco, this is going to be the money part of the event. Should we stay green as we are? Drivers are now at the front on lap 32, approaching lap 33 of their stint. If you look at this lap, 83 laps to go this time, what is your marker to come down? Where is that sweet spot?
Well, most of the drivers will know that the pit window is going to open around 65 to go at the top end of it. But generally speaking, you don't necessarily also want to come to pit road as soon as it opens. We've seen recently here on the KBueno Racing Network that it's a magical thing how cautions come out just in the middle of pit stop cycles, and it could stretch the whole field and just throw it all, a wrench into it all. So I think most of everybody's either going to split or go to the very end of their current fuel stint in about 30 more laps. So there's going to be about a 15 lap window where we could see those pit stops occur. Except for those guys that did stay out longer. Matthew Perricini, who settled out in 11th place, is the highest running of those cars that are on the alternative strategy. He's gone 56 laps, approaching 57 on his stint. So he's going to be in for a pit stop here in a matter of a few laps, and it's going to be just outside the fuel window unless he can stretch it enough, which he may, just might, but depending what lap he does come in, it'll put him and the others for that matter into that questionable area. It looks like Jesse Whittington did make a pit stop not too long ago, was probably realized that he wasn't going to be able to make it. He's jumped on and made a pit stop. He's going to have to stop again in this race, but he's a lap down right now in 26th.
And it was a 14.3 second stop, so you'd imagine 4 fresh tires and a splash of fuel. Didn't seem like an impromptu pit stop for Jesse Whittington, or unscheduled in any way, so we'll just keep an eye on him now that he's a lap down, and potential for him to get the lucky dog should a yellow flag arise, like it has so far, to break up our longest green flag runs where the drivers are at the edge of grip. Justin Erb on the edge of control, exit turn 2, leaned on Brandon Banks back to turn 3. Bit
of a close call there between those two, but they remain racing for that spot. That's A little bit of Ross Harlow closing in on that action for another spot, and there's Steven Harlow closing up the gap with Stempion and Muscarella continue to battle for second, but have dropped off the pace. Porter has done an excellent job at saving those tires with that track position, has grown his lead out to 1.5 seconds as everybody starts to stack up behind the 88 Droppin the Hammah machine.
The only driver that has matched lap times, or at least gotten within a few thousandths of a second of Jaden Porter that last time by, was Ross Harlow at a 30.760. Porter last time set a 30.757 and is even faster this time around, 30.745. Porter continues to avalanche on the competition as the mess ensues behind. Here comes Steven Harlow pointing his nose, firing on the bottom shelf. He'll have a bit of drafting help potentially from Banks entering turn 3, but Harlow at a race-high third and doing it all by his lonesome textbook pass in 3 and 4.
A good move here for that number 6 as there's the push now from Muscarella, trying to see if he can get back around, but it won't be enough for him. So Steven Harlow has done a good job in this long run to also take care of his tires, and now he's starting to reap some of the benefits. It's matching your race leader's lap times. Muscarella drifts up high. He almost gets into the 6, but there now comes Brandon Banks, who's also done a good job of saving his tires. And I'll tell you what, Kenneth, looking at the lap times, Brandon Banks is actually the fastest car inside this top 5. He put up about nearly a 10th compared to your race leader on the previous lap before this one. Is going to not have nearly as good of a lap this time as Muscarella got to the quarter panel, drags him back in the process. But that 5 and 6 definitely look like some of the more competitive cars besides your top spot holder.
And you got to give that question mark to whether Banks and Harlow can make an effort on Jaden Porter before we inevitably end up in a situation where it's a long enough run and drivers do have to come down pit road. But that's really where the prospect of 100% fuel comes into play, Francisco, because you and I, in a lot of leagues on iRacing, and a lot of them run under the fundamental rule of 75% fuel. You run about 50 laps, 55 laps, that's the average fuel run, counting for maybe a bit of saving, but even if you don't save, you could run over 50 laps on a tank of gas before inevitably having to come down pit road. Now that you have 100% fuel, you can go way longer on the same set of tires that just continues to dwindle over the long run. How differently does that shift the focus for a driver, especially now in the top 10 where, I mean, all of them are kind of hanging on for dear life and they understand they can still go a rather long way. It's just how long can the tires hold up for them with 74 to go?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with the fuel and the tires. And I would say this, I think it'll be interesting one day if iRacing adds a wear rate to these tires, a multiplier wear rate like we see in NASCAR video games, something like that to kind of match the fuel fills. As there's now Banks to the inside of Stempion for the 3rd spot. And it's different because you get a different handling characteristic, you get a different tire wearing characteristic between the different fuel fills. If you get 75%, the car's a little bit tighter, maybe the right front wears a little bit more. If you're running 100% here, car frees up a little bit, it runs a little bit more natural, maybe it's a little bit more even where you're maybe not necessarily loose, maybe a little bit freer as Cedric Hunter maybe tries to go 3 wide, they'll end up going side by side instead. So whatever trend the setup is, depending on your fill and what your fuel condition is, it just goes either tighter or looser, and that plays a huge role as Banks really does a good move there off of turn number 4, gets to the inside of Stempion with 4 momentum. He could clear here for 3rd off into turn number 1.
And this has been a long-lasting battle between those two cars, and turns 1 and 2 have been the difference maker for most of these passes on the inside. And finally, Banks accomplishes that move. He did shave off some time on Jaden Porter and Steven Harlow. Porter continues to enjoy a 1.6 second gap back to the 2nd place car in Harlow, and then it's about 0.6 of a second before Banks can inevitably try to make a move on Harlow at the moment. So they'll continue their fight. Brandon Banks makes his clearance. Now Alex Muscarella, the teammate, will take a charge on Stempion. And the tires have dropped off for the Massachusetts native Francisco. What was at once a strong run has turned now a little bit dangerous for the 88 car as he's getting packed up in traffic here on the back straightaway. And there's Cedric Hunter on the inside as well.
He probably wasn't able to keep those tires under him as good as he did. Those other runs probably tried to push to try and get the lead away, and now has to pay a little bit of that price as he starts dropping off. Is nearly 2/10 slower than almost everybody else in his immediate vicinity, so it's just a struggle right now for the 88. He's hoping something could equalize here soon to just kind of save him. There's Cedric Hunter, as you noted, moving his way up into 6th. Has been trying to play catch up almost the entire night long so far, and he's a spot away from moving up into the top 5.
What a drive from Cedric Hunter this evening. One of the first few not to take a time in qualifying. And like we said, sort of the opposite sequence as it happened last season, where he was one of the strongest cars early and then dwindled late. And then, of course, some trouble later on had cemented his place in the back of the field. But tonight, it's a very different Cedric Hunter, and it's a very different Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season. It's a new dawn, it's a new day. And the Canadian has already made some good work in what is now one of the longest runs of the night, coming to 68 laps remaining. So Hunter moves into the top 5 for the first time tonight. And looking to add on to the tally as Alex Muscarella plays defense here in 4th place. Meanwhile, Jaden Porter remains out in front by 2 full seconds over Stephen Harlow. The lap times a full 10th better for the Louisville, Kentucky native. And, you know, we've talked about how important clean air is here with these new next-gen cars, adding the more realistic features of side draft that's much stronger, and overall turbulent air in the wake of the car in front. That's more reflective of what happens at these tracks in real life. And Jaden Porter has really exemplified what you have to do in the race lead at any given moment. Now, there is still a pit stop to go, so there is a chance for any of the other drivers behind to make any daring moves, any daring strategies that have changed perplexions of games before. However, Porter is really in a flow state, Francisco, and he's enabled himself to run well at the front for most of the outing and has really stretched out to this full advantage that just continues to open up now.
Just over 2 seconds now is the lead for Porter, 2.2 to be exact, over Stephen Harlow, and it's 3 seconds back to Brandon Panks, who's matching him a little bit better than, say, Stephen Harlow's been doing, at least on a consistent enough pace. If Porter's able to keep this gap up, at this point, Porter should try to make an effort to be one of the last on pit road. The last run is so long in this race, you can afford to do so. It's so many laps they'd have to run. You get a tire advantage even if you lose that time on pit road. 1, you protect yourself against a caution, but 2, you can give yourself, 35, 40 laps of slightly fresher tires. We saw what that did to a lesser extent with the 94 when they went on that alternative strategy. It took them a while, but they made up the time and it got up there. So for Porter, especially if he has a lead to begin with, like he has right now, at this point, just don't put yourself in a position to throw this race away. If you pit early, you run the risk of the caution flag, which I'm sure it's on some people's minds.
Well, with the trends that we've seen tonight, I wouldn't be surprised, Francisco, if anyone thought there would be a race-changing caution right now, because we've seen at the edge of grip and the drivers with worn-down tires, just one mistake off of turn 2 or turn 4, while in the midst of a battle or even by yourself, can send the car around, and it takes one yellow flag to change up the idea. But coming to 64 laps to go, there will be that idea of just pitting one more time before this race is over, as we watch the battle inside the top 15. And we do have a first decision from the main group of leaders. Steven Stempion decides his time is now to come down pit road.
That's going to be interesting to see who else that brings down pit road, because Stempion was definitely struggling on those tires, but he was very much still in this top 10. So somebody in that top 10 is going to have to decide to bring it down the lane as well. Looks like Charles Stevens does not bring it down the pit lane, but everyone else soon enough is going to be down the lane no matter what. 63 laps to go is when he made his call. He's pitting, and he's definitely sure he's going to get to the end. He would have pit now and not have enough fuel to get to the checkered flag. So if that's our benchmark, 63 laps to go when Steven Stempion goes down pit road, then everybody else is within 10 laps of going just as far and having to force to come down pit road. So we'll see how that works out for Stempion being that early down pit road. He'll gain the time short run. We'll see if he saves tires better on this run and just stand a chance with the top spot.
Well, also has to watch where he is relative to all the other traffic, Francisco, because lap goes by, nobody else follows suit on pit road. And as the laps continue down, the advantage for Stempion slowly dwindles apart from maybe some track position on the cycle here. But if everyone else continues to stay out, not sure if they're entirely bleeding time to Stempion. They are, especially in this first part of the run. But later on, that crossover point will come on, and then there will be possibly some trouble for the Massachusetts native. Now Chuck Stevens decides he'll come to pit road with 60 laps to go, and he, much like Stempion, is the only car making this trip a solitary move. to the entrance of pit lane. No troubles there for the 84, and that's simwrapmarket.com Chevrolet as he comes in for his set of service for the final time. That leaves Jaden Porter continuously out in front, and then you think of when everybody else in the top 5 will elect when their time will be to enter pit road. But for right now, everyone's rather content with staying out for the moment and just making sure they can get these tires to last as long as possible. Jaden Porter up in front, and then further behind in the top 6, Justin Erb and Alex Muscarella may deal a battle for 5th.
They're trying to make sure that they can go as long as possible. We talked about the risk of the caution flag. If those two guys that were running inside the top 10 come down pit road and we don't really see anybody really reflect the strategy call, that means that they're playing the caution rather than the strategy. It just, you think about it, you get this long 50-plus lap run to try and combat it. As now the 6 goes down pit road, and this is going to be one to watch. Harlow was relatively decent on that long run, had decent tire wear, and was able to save really nicely, was running second as the 32 also pits a little bit further back. That's going to be one to watch. I think the 6 going down pit road could drag a few more of the top runners in. We'll see if Porter decides to pit on this lap. The answer is no, probably the right move for Porter. But we'll see if Banks decides to make a trip down the pit lane. Doesn't appear so for the 5. Nor does anybody else in this top 5 for that matter. But eventually they are going to have to pit. Right now Porter's on his 59th lap of his stint. We saw that most of the field pitted with about starting 63 laps to go in this race. So over the next 5 or so laps, most of this field will be down this pit lane.
There's Daniel Holtcroft. His Budweiser Ford Mustang is in. So trickling down the order, you see some of those cars coming in by themselves or maybe in a duo on pit road, but it's not a wholesale decision. It's not consensus by any means to come in as a group and try to end out as a group. There is Kip Beasley coming down from pit road, so he gives up 9th place, and Daniel Holtcroft is going to try and cycle out. So here's Steven Stempion on the left side of your screen. He was, again, the first driver to pit on this sequence, coming to 56 laps to go. And as he weaves through traffic, waiting for everyone else to fully make this cycle. And on the right side of your screen, there's Jaden Porter, just weaved a little high of the lines. Exit turn 4, Brandon Banks will take the lead, but Jaden Porter's in without an issue.
It's going to be interesting to see that blend eventually with the 88 of Steven Stempion after Porter completes his stall, because right there is Stempion unlapping himself relative to Porter. So now he has to go around the racetrack again and pass Porter if he wants to be in the net race lead, because that will be the battle for the top spot. We also have the 6 to maybe contend with, the 6 of Stephen Harlow, is behind the 88 out on the racetrack. It's approximately 3 seconds that separate those two, as there's Porter completing his service, and there is the 88 now exiting turn 4 on the racetrack. Porter right there at the end of pit road. This is going to be close with that blend on the backstretch, because Porter has to stay on the apron going into turns 1 and 2, and that blend is going to be really close to watch. There's Porter trying to get up to speed. There's Stempion already at racing speeds, and Stempion will get by, but remember, Stempion has 8-lap older tires. Porter was able to save them better on the long run. Let's see how this plays out after the fuel stops.
Is there a proper advantage for Jaden Porter, or does that get washed away as the laps continue to wind down? That gap sits at about 0.6 of a second. It remains stable coming back to turn 1. Steven Stempion will have some lap traffic up in front to start to deal with. That's actually not lap traffic. Well, Matt Baines is, but for Ross Harlow, that is a lead lap car in 8th that still has yet to come down pit road, although he pitted about 11 laps ago, so he did actually come down not too long ago. And they're slowly catching up to Matt Perusini. Matt Baines washes up high, middle 3 and 4. Jaden Porter, it's a little bottleneck there at the entry, but this is the battle for the net race lead to turn 1.
Porter's been closing the gap. That just goes to show what fresh tires do. And the 16 runs the middle. Stempion tried to go to the bottom, and an easy move for Porter around the outside. It looks like one of those vehicles a little bit in trouble off of turn 2. It's the 07, but Porter easily gets around Stempion, will easily get by the 16 as cars continue to dwindle down pit road. Now Cedric Hunter and Justin Erb, the top 2, are in. Matt Byers remains out as the race leader, has yet to bring it down pit road. This is now 64 laps that he's gone on his stint. Now 65 actually at the cross of the start finish line. Next car that has stayed out is Matthew Perusini, nearly a lap down relative to the 72 machine that continues to run out front, but is still ahead of Jaden Porter for position. And we'll see if that 72 brings that down this lap. And that goes to show that that window of about 65 laps being the maximum was really true. And Stempion pinning 63 laps to go, with as fast as he's been, it could be tight for him on the scheduled distance.
And there's the 72 on pit road. Perusini is also left to finish this cycle out. Jaden Porter in the race lead, but not by much. About a car length back to Ross Harlow. It's a 10-lap difference between those two. It is an 8-lap difference between Porter and Stempion in tires alone. And we saw just how Jaden Porter was able to really extend his dominance late in that opening run. And with 50 laps to go, Porter looking to knock this one through for his second career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series win, while Harlow and Stempion want to prove him wrong that they still have it in them.
And actually, an interesting point here, Kenneth, is that this 96, I forgot to remind everybody, he pitted well before the fuel window was ever open, so he's going to have to stop again, but his tires aren't nearly as old as everybody else's, so he is in the race lead right now. In actuality, he's going to be hoping for a caution flag sometime in the next 35 laps, so he doesn't have to bring it back down the pit lane and maybe get some track position that way. He's going to get passed by these three, but that's not, I don't think that's his strategy play. At least the top spot isn't right now.
Well, that's where you factor in how long do you really want to stay out and how long is too long, because you can overcut as long as you want, and in some cases it does work. It gives you a shot just to be able to get the fresh tires like Porter did, take over the net race lead, and then further take control of the race. However, if you're Perusini, you've been out so long, now you're within tracking distance of these main guys that are fully cycling out. So then at some point, those tires continue to dwindle down in life, your grip level goes away, the lap times in reflection slow down, and then all of a sudden, you're out there so long to the point where you're actually losing more time being out there on the racetrack rather than gaining any advantage you have. And that, again, goes to the point of where is a sweet spot in a pit road run, and that's what makes races like these so fascinating. In the different lanes the drivers choose, the different tire sets they want to use at any given moment, and then situations like this, where Perusini finds himself in a saving grace moment where he needs a yellow to save his race. He won't get it right now, and he won't have the race lead off of turn 3 because Jaden Porter pivots underneath. He is separated from Ross Harlow on any pressure that existed then. Perusini's going to fight back hard for what it's worth on the outside of turn 4. But Jaden Porter wants to get this done very quickly and in a rush. Back to the first corner with 46 laps to go. Porter noses ahead, and Porter officially cycles back to the lead. Perusini still got him under check.
It's not that much of a tire difference compared to some of the other vehicles as they were lapping, so Perusini's trying to fight in case the yellow flag comes out now, especially if he can convince most of the field to come back down pit road, but eventually those tires are just going to win out with Porter. It's just too much for the 96 to be able to handle. He tried his best, but Porter goes back to the lead now. 45 laps for the scheduled end of this one, and now he can start to build a gap on Ross Harlow, Steven Stempion, and Steven Harlow, all of which he has better tires than at this point in the run.
As the onboard look from Porter, already has led 58 laps and counting here from Las Vegas as he officially cycles out to the lead. And we're going to have a fantastic fight for second. Those are all between teammates, by the way. The Harlows in the sandwich, they're the bread of it. And then right in the middle is Stempion running in fourth. They, of course, still need to get around Perusini, and they possibly will do in a couple moments' time. But they will possibly battle between each other. And not only is that a positive sign for Porter, because those drivers will lose time, Porter will be able to extend his lead as he gets around lap car Jason Anderson on the back straightaway. But of course, this is for solid position, and it goes back to the topic we brought up earlier in the show, the new chase format. Going to be all about consistency, running well any given weekend. One difference in position is going to change the complexion of a regular season run entering that chase format. So both the Stempion driver and the Harlow duo going to try their best to put in their best foot forward, as there is Steven Harlow. Wonderful run at the exit of turn 2, manipulating the high side to find that speed on the straightaway, and into turn 3, it's now the Harlows one-on-one. Steven's going to use the bobble from Ross up in front to parlay it into a move in turn 1.
Shades of Kurt and Kyle Busch here at their home racetrack. Ross and Steven Harlow trying to work on each other here for a spot that is currently at third but could end up being second, as Ross will Steven will dial up the high side on Ross. Steven Stempion just kind of lurks a little bit back now. Just on one of the older set of tires has just really struggled with it in the second half of this race as the rubber's been laid down. It's not been nearly successful of a night for the 88 as it did start. As there's Ross creeping up to the back of Steven, now peeks to the outside momentarily, will give the shove down the front straight. All of them catching up to the 96 of Matthew Perosini, but look who's joined the fight. That's Brandon Banks now to the inside of Steven Stempion. That's their 3 wide with Ross Harlow going back to turn number 3. Brandon Banks is running similar, if not faster lap times than your race leader right now. It's very much shades of Atlanta.
And he's got 3 lap better tires. Like you said, it's been what a run for Brandon Banks. He still has some traffic to deal with and a ton of time to close down. But 40 laps is well more than enough on a silver platter to help Brandon Banks try to feast and grab his 3rd career, dropping the Hammah Cup Series win. On the inside of Perosini, that's where Steven Harlow lies. That's the fight for 2nd. Now with each passing moment that Perosini is spending out on the racetrack, he will have to pit eventually in this race unless he can just make this a long stretch. But no indications that he's saving fuel. And Brandon Banks approaches on the scene with a chance to take a 2-for-1 in the first 2 corners. Brandon Banks closing up on 2nd, closing up on 3rd. He's got the nose underneath Perosini. He's within distance and he can still see the leader coming into turn 3.
To get by Steven Harlow, and those are, as we get sideways, a bit of a moment there for Banks as he was in the dirty air. He's going to give up the spot to Perosini, but he saves it. A solid mistake there out of the 5. Looks like the 88 of Stempion tries to keep the momentum going, but he hangs on to 4th, this Banks, for the time being. That could have been a lot worse, but that cost him crucially a lot of time.
And thankfully keeps it corrected, so Banks avoids disaster there to bring out another caution. As here's the fight for 11, not too far behind. This is also in a pure cycle out on tires. Richard Swavely on a 13-lap advantage over Warren Kyle Keith. Told us earlier in the way he was going to strategize to get back in this race, but the things have opened up in this event to where he's only been able to muster a top 15 and could possibly hemorrhage some more positions with Daniel Holdcroft on fresher tires in turn 1 and teammate Parker Blandon, that UPS Ford Mustang, kind of looming in the distance as well off of turn 2. What a race it's been from Las Vegas. We've had all of the things combined, some chaos, some strategy, and now a possibility for a driver to get his 2nd career victory here tonight. With 36 to go, it's Porter, Steven Harlow, and Brandon Banks, your top running 3. Matthew Perosini, the rookie, in 4th. Steven Stempion running in the top 5 with Cedric Hunter behind in 6th place. Ross Harlow back in 7th. Chuck Stevens running top 10 all night long in 8th. Here's Hunter, bottom 3 wide in turn 3, gets the 2-for-1. So Hunter moves up to 4th. Alex Muscarella and Ray Rogers, the top 10. What a move from Hunter.
Yeah, Hunter's moving 2 on this long run, so don't count him out either. He's only a 2nd behind Banks, and he's very much mirroring Brandon Banks' pace. So if he is able to make inroads on the 5, we could end up with our 3-way battle for the lead in the closing stage of this race as Banks now officially moves up to 2nd, and that bobble did not slow him down. He's running consistently about 0.2 quicker than Jaden Porter.
But of course, does he have time? And in this moment, does he waste whatever's left of his number 5 Chevrolet? There's the onboard look from Banks, and there's the distance. In the shadows of turns 1 and 2, he can see Jaden Porter, and he is licking his chops. Another bit of time gained at the exit of turn 2. He's still nearly a 2.5 seconds back. But 34 laps, Francisco, is a healthy amount of time for Banks to just slowly work at it. He's not in a rush. He just needs to find a way to execute.
But then you also have to turn and ask yourself, was Jaden preparing for this? He remembers Atlanta fondly. He remembers that, and he talks about it. Being in the lead, being in the position he was, doesn't have that much older tires compared to Brandon. 3 laps is really not that much. But was he aware of the strategy enough to say, okay, I'm just going to try to save my tires here in case Brandon is able to make a charge so I can try to defend a little bit better. That last lap, the advantage goes to Porter by 1/100th of a second. This time, looks like Banks might close the gap a little bit as well. But if it stays that way, I'm sure that's what Porter will take, as at start finish line, it's very much so 300s in the favor of Banks. I think Porter will take that a little bit here, a little bit there, as long as he remains out front. Either way, if the advantage that Banks is gaining on the race leader is very minimal, and we end up in a situation where he's just caught behind the 28, we saw what happened with Stempion earlier, it's just going to be very difficult to pass.
And there's still one more factor that we have yet to talk about, and that's lap traffic. No, Matthew Perricini was not a lapped car. He was in position, and he still is there inside the top 10. But now you've got some lap cars up the road. Porter made quick work of Jason Anderson on the back straightaway. That was a done deal in a hurry. He was able to establish that buffer very quickly from everyone else behind him. But now, you watch what's happening in the midst of this group, and there are still 2 cars out there on the horizon that Porter still needs to catch and beat. Although, of course, it is a question mark whether he will actually catch them coming to 30 laps to go. However, it is still a plausible outcome that if Porter catches up to lap traffic and finds himself in trouble, that could allow the door to open ajar, and for guys like Brandon Banks and even Stephen Harlow to make an effort and imprint in this finale of the race. But by the way, Francisco, we mentioned Brandon Banks putting in faster laps than Jaden Porter. They have both slowed down to the tune of maybe 0.04 of a second, and Stephen Harlow is reeling this 5 car back in for the runner-up spot.
Possibly some tire management there out of Banks after he got up to second. I'm not too sure. It's very tough to tell when we're on this side of it, seeing what goes on. But Banks, that last lap was a 10th quicker than Porter, so he definitely still has the ability to put in some quicker lap times, but just hasn't exactly shown it now. They're not showing their hands. They're not going all out on the deck card right now. They're just trying to make sure that they still have some nice plays to be able to use here in the final going of this race. Cedric Hunter's not too far out of it either. That 45 is slowly creeping his way up into this battle. You see that pink Hello Kitty machine in 4th, closing in on this 3-way battle for 2nd. What could be in a moment's time. The gap now roughly 1.3 seconds out in front of the leader. And if Banks can get a little bit away from Harlow, I'm sure he'll be a little bit happy about it, as there's Perricini now on pit road. He'll lose a lap here after finally coming down pit road. Was going to have to make that final pit stop anyway, but I guess just wasn't expecting the caution flags. Here's Jesse Whittington, who also is in a similar situation. 59 laps on his stint at the time of that pit stop right now. As here's the onboard look from Harlow. And it's stagnant still at 1.3 between the leader and Banks, but Cedric Hunter does continue to close in the gap ever so slightly. So if all 3 of these cars get battling, I'm sure Porter would like it.
Would certainly like to see the sight, and the lap car group is starting to conglomerate just a little bit. It was 2 cars with equidistance to each other, and now it's opened up to a quartet that Jaden Porter may inevitably have to catch and beat in the final stint of this race. There's James Kunkel, that progressive Ford Mustang on fresh tires. Just came off a pit road not that long ago, so maybe he will put in an effort and split some of these cars up if it ends up in the right place, right time. Although he'll have to work patiently to get around Harlow, who gives up the inside. So Kunkel will move underneath and will eventually catch up to Brandon Banks to make this a proper charge. Although they are in the attempt to catch up to Jaden Porter, the gap remains stable. 1.1 seconds between the 2 cars. And you ask yourself, how much time does Brandon Banks have left in him to make this an effort for the win? Or is this shot too far gone? He gives up the inside to Kunkel. That allows Harlow to make up an effort, maybe another 10th. With 25 laps to go, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th are all starting to come together, while the leader hopes his advantage is just enough. But the gap is now just a second and closing between the top 2.
Banks still has some speed in that car. He just hasn't shown it all. Just trying to see what Porter does, and there's the caution.
And a crucial caution flag coming out with 24 laps to go. And it's the rookie Matt Baines involved in the accident off of turn 2. And this race is changed.
Oh, if you're Matthew Perricini, you were just hoping that you could have stayed out at least another 5 laps to catch that caution flag. That would have been the one that got him back into this race. Unfortunately, He's going to stay a lap down, has to take a wave around here. There's the look at the impact. Looks like that happened way earlier, possibly off of turn 2. The 72 may have gotten hit from behind into the outside wall, damaging his race car. We'll get the overhead shot here as he's racing with Warren Kyle Keith. Keith goes to the bottom. And looks like no, on his own, just gets into the outside wall, gets sideways, overcorrects it into the outside wall. And he's good there. And I'm not sure if anything broke with the way the car just kind of turned back to the right after it appeared as though he had it under control. But nonetheless, he spun, and that puts us under only our 3rd or 4th caution of the evening. And that, or 4th caution of the evening. And now that's going to open up the pit lane, and I think everyone will be in. The question is, what do you do here on this pit stop?
Is it a 2-tire call, or is it 4? Jaden Porter leads him on in for what could be the most pivotal stop of this race. After the Baines caution lets this field operate in a window where one mistake could be race over. Jaden Porter waiting for his pit box. He has to wait for pit stall number 2. He's way up there. Everyone else is behind with a chance to catch up. Jacks are up. Jaden Porter getting his service. He has the best exit of everybody so far, and he will take 2 fresh Goodyear Eagles and step in front. Justin Erb is going to have a chance to spoil the party, and Justin Erb makes his way to 2nd.
Those are the only 2-tire calls in the entire field. I'm surprised we didn't see more. Maybe Steven Maggio's not in this race to throw an extra 2-tire call out there on the racetrack right now, but Jaden Porter, doesn't surprise me seeing him going aggressive for this move. We've heard the drivers talk about the setup is pretty tight here, and well, our cautions have kind of proved that to be the case. So 2 tires to free it up here in the final 20 or so laps doesn't surprise me.
Jaden Porter, Justin Erb, the only drivers to take 2 tires. Everyone else, led by Brandon Banks, is going to have 4. And again, pivotal calls. This is the moment of the race where you decide to do that. Looks like for Banks, Hunter, Stempion, and all those drivers behind, they feel more secure on 4 fresh, while Jaden Porter is going to stay on just 2 right side tires. I mean, this isn't just any 2-tire call, Francisco. This is a 2-tire call on left side tires that are significantly worn. That was the longest green flag run we've had all night long, and yes, you factor in the pit stop, but those are very worn out Goodyear Eagles. Porter's going to give it a shot. Justin Erb is also going to give it a swing. But is that possible danger for those 2? And they've already made the bet. They've got to lie in it on a crucial restart with 20 laps left.
And that's the key. That many laps, and certainly the handling should help. We'll see what happens here on this restart. We've seen how aggressive these restarts can get. This may be the most aggressive one yet. It's going to be exactly 20 laps to go when we go back racing. 20 laps is either quick or a long time here around this racetrack, depending who you are and where you are. But for Porter, he's got the best position of it all. He's going to have the race lead. He's going to have the track position. As long as he can hang on to it, he could come away with a possible race win.
Jaden Porter already with a race victory. In his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career, it came at the virtual Dover Motor Speedway. Justin Erb's previous best finish, a 3rd in mid-May at the virtual Worldwide Technology Raceway. A top 10 last week at Daytona and a chance to win tonight. With everyone else behind on 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles, how does this restart play out? 20 laps to go. Erb spins the tires, and he's going to go right into the outside wall. He'll collect some of the others in the field, and the yellow flag comes out.
And that's actually one of the few things we didn't mention about these restarts was the possibility of tire spin, and it catches the 20 out. And he's now going to lose all that track position after getting it with that call. And unfortunately, Alex Mascarella looks like he gets a piece of something there on the on possibly what was the stack up from the outside lane after the 20 spins out. As we'll get the replay here to see exactly what happened, but it was pretty clear. 20 spins the tires, trying to react to Jaden Porter, get a good launch, and spins to the outside. Fortunately, he doesn't directly bring anybody else with him, but you could definitely see the stack up happen on the outside lane. After this happens, looks like contact with Cedric Hunter didn't help the case either, and as they stack up, Muscarella gets sent out of line, then he spins out in the process.
Here's the second look from Muscarella. Anticipating the restart, and right there they stack up.
Oh, man.
That's rough for a driver who ran up front for a good majority of this race at its beginning, and then rallied back after a slip up in turn 1, and then on this timed yellow flag has himself in the mid-pack, and now with severe damage on his Lowe's Chevrolet, the night for Justin Erb is not certainly over, but it is certainly over in case for the race victory, as he was the only other car to take 2 fresh Goodyear Eagles. Jaden Porter continues to assume the race lead with 17 laps to go. Let's get a moment to talk with Justin Erb there. And Justin, you were along Jaden Porter, 2 tire takers. What was the decision behind that, and what was the thought process as you were looking for some of that crucial track position?
Well, after the pit cycle, I found myself a little bit behind where I really wanted to be. Found myself in around like 10th when I went in at around 3rd. So just thought I'd take a gamble and spun the tires. Just wasn't ready for it. So yeah, looks like I gotta crawl my way back up here.
So of course, as we've seen last season, this race has not been over at this point. You know, other cautions have also come out, and overtime restart. So how do you plan to recuperate back in this race and get a promising finish out of it?
I'm just looking to keep her clean for now. I mean, I've ran a pretty clean race so far, so I don't think it'll be that hard. Just looking to get down to the checkered flag here, hopefully on the lead lap.
Well, Justin, we appreciate the time, and a tough break there on the restart, but still a car worthy to get a good finish, and appreciate it. Appreciate the time, and best of luck on the restart.
Yep, thank you.
That's Justin Erb, driver of his number 20, the Home Depot Ford Mustang, as he'll be the first car to fall a lap down. So in a case for a yellow flag, which still very well could happen here in the final 15, when we get this restart, a chance to get the SKM Lucky Dog and be able to get back on the lead lap with a chance to finish well. So with that, 1 2-tire call is out of the equation. The other remains in the race lead now. Jaden Porter with a 4 fresh tire car on the outside in Brandon Banks, and the rest of the field behind on the very same call. So it's a lone situation out there for the Louisville, Kentucky native. Brandon Banks looking for career win number 3. And by the way, not too far behind, Cedric Hunter, who won a 1.5-mile race at Charlotte last season, and Steven Stempion, who had been a force upcoming in this race for a little while, and then sort of stapled back, and now has a chance to revive himself. At this point, Francisco, are we going to see more cautions?
I think the safe decision would be saying yes. We will probably see the yellow flag more than once between now and the end.
Well, last season it came down to a 2-to-go restart, and it had to be Lawson Peel to execute to win that race. Does it fall in the same hands tonight? Jaden Porter trying to cling for dear life on the 2 fresh tires, the rest on 4. Brandon Banks gets away late. Jaden Porter with a flawless restart. 16 laps to go.
And Banks trying to clear for second, but Cedric Hunter's just there enough, but he shuts off that 45, so Banks does get clear for P2 on the racetrack. A little bit of a bobble out of the 5 could bring the 45 back into it, as everybody's kind of strung out. There goes the, looks like the 84 to the inside of Ray Rogers. It's Charles Stevens trying to make the position up for 7th. Banks is going to drift up off of turn 4 as Stempion and the 45 of Cedric Hunter make contact.
And they touch. They lean on each other again. Back to turn 1. Cedric Hunter planting and firing underneath Stempion. So far, he's got the clearance off turn 2 as the Harlows go at it. Trying to pass their teammate in Stempion. Bit of help down the back straightaway for Stephen Harlow. Ross Harlow on the bottom. And Chuck Stevens flailing underneath with a chance to break into the top 5. While Jaden Porter watches the 2-car length advantage stabilize off of turn 4. And this is where you find out, Francisco, where does the advantage lie between the front-running 2?
It's going to be difficult for Banks to make this pass. Those 2 tires are going to help Porter turn the car, which is what's been the struggle this night with the setup for most of the drivers. There's been dealing with a tight car. It's very much the same explanation Steven Madge has given on multiple occasions. You couple that with the decrease in track temperature, it's down to 80 degrees now, so a lot more throttle time than any other time that we've had in this race. It's going to be very difficult for Brandon to try and mount a charge here with 13 to go.
It was at 1.91 in the mid portion of this race. The sun has gone a bit down here in the Nevada skyline, and Jaden Porter from the Midwest trying to make sure he can find his way to another Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series victory, while the South Carolina native of Brandon Banks aims to chase him down, and there's still time. 12 laps to go. Porter in control, while Ross Harlow behind is fending for his life. The 3 DTH teammates going nose to tail in turn 1 from 5th to 6th place, and then even 7th place. Ray Rogers with Chuck Stevens, and now Garrett Walden back in the mix. What a comeback for Walden.
Yeah, he's done a good job of getting himself back into this race after the alternate strategy just kind of went sideways on him and the other drivers that tried it. And you can say the same thing for a couple of other drivers on the backside of this top 10, as multiple drivers slapped the outside wall off of turn 4. There in this top 10 includes Charles Stevens. Kevin Roy in the 22s worked back up there as well. And on the outskirts of it, Richard Swavely's been a struggling night for the 42 machine, but he's clipped his way up to 12th right now, seeing if he can get a top 10 when all things are said and done here this evening. But out front, Jaden Porter continues to hold about 4/10 now over Brandon Banks, and those 2 tires definitely helping out the grip here for that 28 machine. And as we're approaching now 10 laps to go in this race.
And what became a threat for Brandon Banks in the long green flag run not that long ago has seemingly become a threat here in the final stage of this race with 10 to go, because Cedric Hunter is slowly creeping up in lap time. He is slowly getting there. So at any moment that Brandon Banks slips up, there is that opportunity for Cedric Hunter to take shape and push himself at the front of this field, and that very well could happen here. He's got a strategical shot inside 9 laps to go. Distance between 1st and 3rd, only 0.6 of a second.
And Cedric Hunter's still close enough to try and mount a charge for that 2nd spot. But we do have a battle going on for 4th. Ross Harlow now to the inside of Steven Stempion battling away. And Steven Harlow closing in the gap. Those 3 have just found themselves together on the racetrack more often than not in today's race. That 88 has really struggled in the second half. Looks like he has a bit of a moment there in turn 4. It's going to allow both Harlow brothers to try to mount the attack. And don't look now, but in 7th place in that, Matt Kent's at this paint scheme is Ray Rogers. It's been a fantastic day for him compared to Daytona. If he can walk away with a top 5 finish when it's all said and done, that'd be a great job, but he's going to have to deal with that 43 of Garrett Walden.
Started a bit far in this field, but Ray Rogers has kept his relentlessness in it, and the veteran experience has left this 51 car with a chance for a top 10, although Walden sneaks underneath, and now on the bottom side, Chuck Stevens with a chance to make a move. Charlie Byer Photography onboard camera with Steven Stempion, watching the 2 Harlows go at it in turn 1. Again, that's the fight for 5th place between the 6 and the 16. The Droppin' the Hammah Chevrolet of Stempion holding on to what is 4th, with a gap that continues to increase up the road, with Cedric Hunter putting some heavy pressure on Brandon Banks, who is now just 0.3 off of the race leader. With 6 laps to go, again, the race is still open. Any mistake from Porter can open up the floodgates. Can this 28 car hold on?
He's a tough driver. He's not normally known for making mistakes in this situation, especially when he has the upper hand. He has just about 5.5 laps to deal with before he's in the clear. His goal is to get to the white flag. Looks like Banks is just struggling to keep up with him, dealing with a little bit of a tighter car than Porter is right now. The track temperature continues to drop, and it's going to come down to maybe if he can get another caution flag in it. If he can get another yellow flag and stack the field up, it's going to be down to that restart. Hope is fading, but not quite completely gone.
And there's Garrett Walden, slapped to the outside wall, trying to chase his career best, dropping the Hammah Cup Series affair in just his 2nd start. Chuck Stevens on the bottom to rotate and add in the pressure as this 4-car train continues to congest right behind Steven Stempion, who has enjoyed now just a bit of elbow room with himself and the rest of this group. How about even further behind Kevin Roy in his number 22 car? Haven't talked much about this Celsius Ford Mustang, I think, Francisco, you would be approving of this car tonight, but Kevin Roy in this race has done a great job of curling through the field, and after starting way back in 29th, has worked his way up to a top 10.
Yeah, the Celsius colors out there on the racetrack being represented nicely in this top 10 now as he makes the move on Ray Rogers from 9th, possibly. You'll be seeing my Celsius colors out there a few times this season later on. I was hoping to be able to run here tonight, but the events in St. Petersburg earlier today ran long and traffic on 75 was just awfully terrible. But got home just in time after taking care of a few things. I was able to join you in the booth when it was all said and done. We've been treated to a fantastic race here, Kenneth, so I'm really glad I was able to make it and be a part of this booth when it was all said and done. And now here we are 2 laps away from this race finish, and Jaden Porter's continuing to do his job right. He's grown it to just over half a second now, and as long as he can get it to this white flag, it'll be a second career win for him. Got the victory, and I believe it was I want to say 92, a 91 car, I believe, also as well. Him and Ethan and Steven, they ran a couple of mixed numbers that wasn't normally their own, but I'm willing sure his mirrored number of 82 is going to be his own here after this race here today as he takes the white flag.
A top 10 last week at the virtual Daytona International Speedway. The driver behind him was the one victorious. And tonight, as we've seen several different Titans at the front, Jaden Porter has emerged as a contender. And as he comes around the final corners, Jaden Porter will complete this race and steal the jackpot from Las Vegas. Second career Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series win comes from Nevada. And crashing to the line is Ray Rogers. And you can tell the level of absolute respect between those two drivers. Brandon Banks saying, a good on you, kid. Great race. Steven Stempion a deal of respect after he comes home in 4th. And in this all-out duel in the final stint, Jaden Porter takes the gamble, takes only 2 tires, and it pays off tenfold. The Kentucky native rolls out of turn 4, will celebrate his second career Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series win and his first at 1.5 miles. Jaden Porter will see Droppin' the Hammah victory lane for the first time in 2026.
Great job by him to choose that 2-tire strategy call. We've seen it work in the past here, especially, and he took that to his own hands. Again, surprised we didn't see more drivers do it, and it looked like a scary moment when that 20 got sideways. It could have possibly opened the door, but just knowing everything that was dealing with the conditions prevailing, Porter made the right call in the end and led the most laps on his way to victory. I believe he led over 100 when it was all said and done. Very deserving win here today.
Fantastic job from Jaden Porter. We're going to look at this white flag lap and the skirmish between Ray Rogers and a couple others. That's Kevin Roy in search of his second straight top 10 this season. After coming home in a good position at Daytona, Ray Rogers, I mean, this is just all-out aggression. Again, all for a spot in the chase. Richard Swavely making it bottom 3, and while Jaden Porter cruises to the dub off of turn 4, the Dollar General Chevrolet of Ray Rogers is going to find himself in a precarious spot. Tangles with Kevin Roy and spinning around backwards across the dice at the start-finish line, and Ray Rogers completes a 12th position run in the top 15. Wow, what a finish.
I think Kip Beasley will take that. He got a top 10 after that.
He did. That was a great finish for Kip Beasley in his number 8 Chevrolet for Drinkin' Bros Racing as we get a look at the unofficial results after the 200 laps and 300 miles from the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway, where at the head of the field, it is Jaden Porter. His second career Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series victory comes tonight in the Sin City. Brandon Banks runs home in second, so continuously out in front and should remain in the DTH Cup Series points lead after tonight is all said and done. Cedric Hunter, with his best run of the season, ends up in third in his Hello Kitty Toyota Camry, with Steven Stempion back in fourth and Stephen Harlow wrapping up the top 5. The other Harlow, Ross, ends up in P6. Garrett Walden, what a comeback drive and a bounce-back effort to move into 7th. Charles Stevens was consistent and quick all night long. A top 10 car and a top 10 result in 8th place. Richard Swavely rounds out the top 10 after a 3-wide move to the inside on some fellow competitors. He is 9th. Kip Easley in his 8 car will round out the top 10 officially.
11th goes to Kevin Roy, who was a part of that contact with Ray Rogers, who comes across the line in 12th backwards. Brad Fulham will finish in the 13th spot. Daniel Holdcroft in 14th. Matthew Parasini, who I'm sure was looking back on it, wishing he stayed out a few more laps to catch that caution at the right time to stay on the lead lap, not have to take the wave around. Finishes in 15th. Christian Marcelli will finish in 16th. James Kunkel in 17th. Warren Kyle Keefe will finish 18th after his fair share of issues throughout the evening. Timothy Stubblefield in the 19th spot. And Alex Muscarello looked like he had a top 5 car going today. Got into some sort of issues there in the final run. Finishes in the 20th position.
Back in 21st is Charles Van Schaik. He's the last car to cross the line on the lead lap. Matt Baines in the 72. First car a lap down. Justin Erbach in 23rd, so could not recover after the spill earlier in the race. Jesse Whittington, 2 laps deep after a promising start to the race. Whittington is 24th at the line. Jason Anderson wraps up the top 25 with Parker Bland, Lauren Vincent, Sheldon Hart, and David Duran, the rest of the top 30 to bring the end of our 29-car field from the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So as we welcome you to the KBRN post-race show here from Las Vegas Motor Speedway, we end up bringing in the driver who is successful at the very end, Jaden Porter, with his 2nd career dub, first here at Las Vegas, and does it in dominant fashion after a 2-tire call to bring it until the end. Jaden, what a run that was for you in those final few laps. You take 2 tires. What was the mindset in that moment and the relief after you stepped out in front and never looked back?
The mindset was keep clean air and drive away. And didn't really do the drive away part, but was able to keep the clean air because clean air was everything. Beginning of the race, I kind of wanted to feel out, like, it's a long race, it's 200 laps, so like I want to feel out how tires are, if they're going to matter, if we're going to be able to move through the field or whatnot. And I had good tires. I feel like I had some of the best tires the whole race. When I got put mid-pack early in the race, the dirty air you get stuck there after a little bit. You just kind of even out everybody. So we had that one caution where me and Steven Stempion came out 1-2 off pit road. And we're like started 5th or 6th. I'm like, okay, I have to push here to get clean air. If I can get clean air, I could probably drive away after 25 or 30 laps. And that happened. We got almost a 3-second lead before green flag stops. I stayed out a little longer to, kind of cover off the undercut, but also, have fresher tires a little bit. And I was fine the last run. I feel like still win the race, even when I was getting caught. I just kind of babied it the first 20 laps of that run and kind of struggled to get my groove back a little bit when I wanted to pick the pace back up. But I feel like I would have been just fine to keep clean air even my green flag run. But yeah, a great win. Feels good to dominate and win a race. I feel like in league races I've been pretty close to winning with my speed, and feels good to finally have it pay off.
So you were mentioning there that discipline you had to carry in this event, and back at your first win at Dover, you had to deal with not only a hard-to-drive track that you ended up dominating, but also stage racing. I want to ask you here, now that we had 200 laps, a lot of it predominantly with green flag runs sprinkled in, how that stage racing mindset kind of changes when there are no stages and when you know there are no manufactured yellows and you can just run this out to the end, especially in that back half of the long stint.
Yeah, I love no stages. I'm a long green flag run person. I love just staying green the whole race. And I don't like manufactured cautions. They're, in my opinion, there's just no point to them. It's just annoying, to be honest, at least as a racer. I don't know, as a race fan, if I care about it as much, but I love this race having no stage cautions. I hope, in future seasons of this, they keep it like this, because I feel like, one, you have a lot more like calmness at the beginning of the races, a lot more clean racing, because drivers aren't running until like lap 50, knowing that there's going to be a caution. They're not running as hard, we're not getting as many wrecks. So hopefully that means we'll get more green flag runs. But I love no manufactured cautions, and glad we got the W today.
So a good win after a top 10 effort last week at Daytona. And Jaden, you see the rest of the schedule unfold after tonight. You see Iowa Speedway up next in their brand new configuration. Echo Park Speedway, a super speedway affair that we also saw in the season before. What stands out to you about this 2026 calendar, and how does this first win maybe elevate the confidence and momentum heading into those next few?
I feel pretty decent. Iowa's going to be about just keeping right front of the car without it blowing off the car. With what I've learned from 4 wide and MRL races I've done there. Echo Park, super speedways don't like to be nice to me as of late. So unless it's NIS open, I guess, but we'll go from there. The beginning part of the schedule is not really like, it's off and on tracks for me, but once we get to like the middle part and the second half of the season, I feel like that's where I'm gonna really have some really good racetracks for me. So it feels good to kind of knock this win out. I know it didn't lock me in the playoffs, but definitely is never can complain about winning races.
That is correct. And also glad that you got a paint scheme in time for the season. I know you were asking one of your good friends to switch the number from your usual 28 to an 82, but it works out. Car looks good. Car ends up in victory lane. Jaden, who do you want to thank for the win tonight from Vegas?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone at KBueno Racing. Usually I'd like to thank my teammates, but I'm by myself in this league. But thanks to you guys for doing the broadcast. Thanks to everybody for watching my stream and watching the YouTube stream. Thanks to Nick put this together. Not Trevor, sorry. Nicholas Bauman for putting the 82 on this car. First win in the 82. I still prefer my 28, but I guess 82 works for now. And thanks for everybody watching, and we'll see you next week, I guess.
Well, Jaden, that 82 is a winning number, and you made that happen tonight from Las Vegas. A big congratulations on behalf of all of us at the KBueno Racing Network, and looking forward to see you at Iowa with the field next week. Go on and celebrate.
All right, thank you, buddy.
That's Jaden Porter coming home victorious in dropping the Hammah victory lane for just the second time in his career and for the first time here in the 2026 calendar. We join Brandon Banks, who comes home runner-up position tonight from the Sin City. And Brandon, this car was quick, no doubter, in the final run of this event. You take 4 tires, you surge up to the field. What did you feel there probably was the last puzzle piece missing to get around Jaden Porter and take the dub?
I really don't know. Honestly, this car is so bad in dirty air. It's like you get in within 5/10 and it's just, yeah, you can't do anything. So he knew what to do. He ran the trick. He ran it right. He just air blocked me the whole last 20 laps or so, and that's what you got to do in here. It's kind of part of the game. But I think honestly, if we wouldn't have caught that green or that caution at the end, I think we would have finished this the same way. I think maybe I might have caught him, got within 5/10 or so, and I just would have plowed just like I did from the restart there. So really, it's really about track position a lot more in this car than it used to be. The dirty air's always been bad, but it's just really bad now. It's because the car is so tight that it just makes it feel even more strong than it used to be. So I don't know. I really don't think I could have did anything except for just hope he bobbled and got to him. But I knew he was going to take 2 at the end. The KBueno guys, they always take 2 at the end, so I knew he was going to do that, and I had to try to do something different. I figured that we could probably still take 4 and keep somewhat decent track position. I thought maybe we could do something with it, but it still didn't matter. I mean, he didn't do nothing but free his car up, and it just helped him for those last 20 laps, and I just was really tight. So, hey, I mean, I think we had a good car. We had a good chance at it. That's all we could do is just keep ourselves in position and, and just give ourselves a chance at it every week. That's just really all you can do.
And I was right to the point I was about to mention. This car on rails at one point, especially through the later portions of what was eventually the longest green flag run of the night. What did you take in from what this car was giving you at this track, and how that helped you morph into faster lap times and a better speed as the race continued?
Yeah, I mean, just had to take care of the right front. A lot of these guys were trying to run the middle. It's fast. You can make passes up there, but it was beating their tires up. So we just kept running the bottom, just kept doing, just running consistent lap times, trying to stay out of the dirty air. And that's pretty much what you got to do. And you could see after about halfway through the run, we were way faster. So, we just tried to take it slow, get through the field, get the track position. It just took us a long time to get track position. I think if we could have stayed green longer, not just that one green flag run, maybe could have got some better track position on Jaden through a pit stop or something like that. Maybe short pitted him and just took the track position. I don't know. I mean, that's really it's hard, man. I mean, I know you know. So Jaden's good. He deserves a win. I mean, he was fast. I think the top 3 guys tonight finished podium. Just Cedric was saying that too. I think we would have finished here regardless. And I think, like I said, you'll take it. First last week, second this week. Got a good points day. Kip finished good. That's all we can really ask for.
Overall performative effort for the Droppin or the Drinkin' Bros Racing Group in this drop in the Hammah Cup Series. Brandon, one final question before we let you say your thanks. First at Daytona, second here at Las Vegas. Certainly, the points lead still intact for you. How important is that to start off the season as strongly as you have?
Oh, it's super important. Like I said, you want to try to run as good as you can in here. These guys are really good. So, just getting, even in the top 10 every week is what your goal is just rack up points. So you're not really getting stage points and things like that, which is fine. I like it. I honestly like these longer races. Take the stages out and let's just race. I'm really enjoying this type of racing. You don't get to see it very much in leagues. So, it's a lot of fun. Kind of looking forward to seeing how a lot of these other races run. And like I said, I think we had a little bit of a lot of cautions there at the beginning that kind of threw the race off a little bit, threw some different strategies in there, which was all right. But I think we're gonna catch a lot of races here that are gonna be really good for us, and get some really long green flag runs. And I think we'll capitalize off those type of runs. So like I said, we're looking forward to it.
Well, it's working well for you in this Drinkin' Bros Racing team at the moment. Second place here at Las Vegas. Brandon, of course, we always appreciate any time we get to talk to you. But before we let you go, as the field heads on to Iowa next week, anybody you want to thank or shout out?
Yeah, like always, man, appreciate you and everybody that does this. Francisco that comes in and helps, man. You guys do an awesome job. Stempion and Kunkel and all those admins that do all the work. Appreciate them. Dropping the hammer. It's an awesome league, man. If anybody wants to join, it's really, really a lot of fun. Obviously Drinkin' Bros. Proud of Kip. Kip was kind of struggling at the beginning and he figured it out, man. He started running there good at the end. I think if we could have had a little bit more time, he would have even been higher. So, like I said, appreciate everybody coming out. Congrats to Jaden. He deserved to win. Like I said, we'll go on next week and try to get better track position a little earlier and see if we can try to win another one.
Well, Brandon, as always, we really do appreciate the time. Much love, Brandon. We'll see you in the field at Iowa next week.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Brandon Banks and his number 5 Chevrolet comes home runner-up spot here from Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Running into third, a sneaky fast run in a car that came alive in the second half for Cedric Hunter. Cedric, first of all, it's great to talk to you again after a little while. It's your best finish in DTH action since second at the Echo Park Speedway last season late. So how good does it feel to rebound from a bit of a struggle at Daytona and come home third tonight?
Yeah, it feels good. Probably the only race I'll be able to run the entire length for the next few weeks. So I'm glad that tonight we were able to at least score enough or some points, some good points, and hopefully not put ourselves too far behind as we eventually move into the chase like months down the road. But yeah, a lot of part-time action for me in the first month or so of the season.
Regardless, Cedric, this car started pretty far back in the field, and I had mentioned it multiple times during the broadcast tonight that it almost seemed like the full opposite of what it was last season, where you started up in the top 10, you had the fastest car in stage 1, and then halfway through the race started to just unravel in a wrong way. Tonight, it started off on the back foot, but you slowly worked your way up. What was that like to methodically work your way through the field, and what you were keeping in mind throughout that all?
Yeah, I think last season I just had more current experience, I guess, with the car. Tonight I hadn't raced these things since Homestead of last season. Like I've been too busy racing the Legacy Next Gen, the Gen 4, and then the Xfinity car. So it's just drives way differently. So the driving style, just I had to adapt, and it took me about 100 laps to do so. And when we did, we finally got rolling really good. And I think last season was just, again, more current experience. Was able to just push really hard, get to the lead, and lead some laps early, and then we got caught up in a wreck that set us back or ruined our race. But I'm glad that we were able to figure it out, because I was kind of worried tonight, like after I'd say lap like 70 or 80, we had like a little bit of a run there, and the pace just wasn't really there, and then we had a caution to just, you know, it just everything snapped into place, and then we started rolling. So I figured it was going to take me a little bit of time to find the pace. I'm glad I was able to kind of figure it out in one or half a race, and hopefully we can keep the ball rolling here. I think Texas will probably be the first race I'll be able to run the full length, so hopefully we get a good run at Texas.
Well, so learning about the part-time effort, are there any tracks that you're able to run that you look forward to this season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to just running the entire schedule. Like I really enjoy these cars, which is probably an unpopular opinion. I feel like most people don't, but I enjoy these cars. I'm looking forward to racing it again. I think like Texas, I enjoy that track. Charlotte's was really good to us last season. Pocono as well. Like, and then just, you know, just trying to get the points back and put ourselves in a position where we can actually make the chase, I think, or playoffs, or whatever the format is for the season. But and hopefully, you know, we can have a chance of winning a championship. I know my teammate last season, Zach Hall, was able to win it, and we kind of threw away a decent run at the championship there with a few laps to go. But he's gone, and so is Peel this season. So I feel like we got a pretty good chance.
I know that was a heartbreaker for me not to see your teammate Zachary Hall in it, and hopefully we get to see more representation from yourself this season, as you mentioned. And it was great to see you here in the top 3 tonight, Cedric. Before we let you go, anybody that you want to shout out or thank for the run?
Yeah, I want to give a huge shout out to Stemp and all the admins for just having another season, setting it all up. Being patient with me in the off season, because they asked me if I was running again. At first I said no, then I said yeah, then I said no, and I was super wishy-washy about it, and finally I was like, all right, like I will, but I'll be a little late to the party. So but they're super cool, super understanding about it all, so I appreciate them. Shout out to Jane for winning tonight, and to Brandon also. We all honestly had really good pace. I think well, in my opinion, I think we were kind of the 3 best cars once the race got settled with long runs and stuff like that. So I think 3 best cars finished in top 3. So congrats to them. Shout out / apologies to Justin for that restart. He spun his tires, and I just didn't have much time to react, and I kind of wrecked his stuff. So so sorry to him. Thank you for doing the broadcast, and lastly to all the fans out there that tune in. You guys put a great job, or you know, do a great job and put on a great show. So I'm gonna pull in or do you a favor here by saying to anybody that's still watching, you know, if you're not already subscribed, you absolutely should be, man. This guy's the GOAT.
Well, that means a lot to me, Cedric, and you're the GOAT here as well. Congratulations on the 3rd place tonight from Las Vegas. Obviously, we hope to see you join the rest of the field for a bulk of the season, but if we don't see you next week, we'll see you the next time you're here. But until then, congratulations on the podium.
Thanks, man. Have a good night.
Cedric Hunter in his number 45 comes home 3rd here from the virtual Las Vegas Motor Speedway after an illustrious end to the race that saw Jaden Porter outlast the rest of the field on strategy on just 2 tires alone. That was enough to get this 28 car the race victory at the end. So with it all, we move forward in this 2026 schedule, and we head to the short track of Iowa. The cornfields will greet the first short track race of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season for 2026. By then, we'll head over to the Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta for some super speedway 1.5 mile racing. Then we'll head to North Wilkesboro, brand new track for there. That will come your way late in March. Texas Auto Club, leading up to the All-Star race in the midway portion of the regular season as we continue the push for the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series chase later on this season. A brand new format, tons of new drivers, tons of new stakes. But it's Jaden Porter, another race victory, his 2nd in his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career comes tonight. Be sure to stay tuned with us tomorrow in the evening for the KBueno Truck Series, the first dirt race of the season at the Eldora Speedway. By then, Wednesday comes around and the 4-wide regular season comes to a close at the World Center of Racing at Daytona. March 5th, you'll see the Pocono action for the SAC Cup Series with the next-gen cars before we're back in action next Sunday night. Be sure to tune in on March 8th, 2026 at 8:30 p.m. Eastern right here on the KBueno Racing Network. So on behalf of Steven Stempion and the entire admin team that makes this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series go round, for Charlie Beyer, Keelan Belsha, Francisco Bacallao, Nate Polite, and all of the wonderful people that help the KBueno Racing Network shine each and every week, I am Kenneth Bueno saying so long from Sin City, where the money lies in the hands of Jaden Porter. Second career DTH Cup Series win comes tonight as the field heads to Iowa next week. We'll see you then.